Imagine being forced into an engagement so deadly that taking a single step into the Grand Duke's palace guarantees a painful death. On top of a polished wooden desk, an official marriage decree sits stamped with crimson wax, sealing a fate no ordinary noble could ever survive. Standing before his cold-hearted father, young Ferda Roznova listens in utter silence as the patriarch demands to know if he truly grasps the horrific reality of his arranged marriage. Ah, yes. Nothing says loving father like using your own son as political suicide bait. Staring down at his trembling hands, Ferda freezes as his own noble name echoes in the dim office. This arranged match to Grand Duke Valdrova isn't a prestigious promotion, it's a calculated death sentence disguised as royal favor. His father sits back with an icy, unbothered expression, quietly observing his son's rising dread. In the high-stakes world of nobility, receiving an assignment like this means you've officially been designated as sacrificial trash. The cruel reality of Ferda's choices unfolds right before his eyes. Either refuse the marriage and be cast out into the wilderness with nothing, or accept and be brutally ripped to pieces by the Grand Duke's lethal court politics. Talk about being caught between a rock and a literal guillotine. But the real tragedy wasn't just this deadly ultimatum. It was the painful truth of what it actually meant to be born into the Roznova bloodline. Born as the frail third son to a mere concubine, young Ferda spent every single day running across the stone training grounds until his chest burned. Yet in the shadow of the courtyard, cold servants whispered mockingly among themselves that his endless effort was entirely meaningless. Cast out into complete isolation within his own home, nobody ever stepped up to support him or lend a helping hand. Yet despite the endless contempt, he swallowed his despair and kept pushing forward. Collapsing onto his knees over the stone tiles, heavy sweat droplets dripped from his chin into small puddles. His body shook violently from sheer exhaustion, but his determination refused to die. Gripping a heavy wooden practice blade with white knuckles, young Ferda panted heavily as he looked up toward the grand estate windows. He naively believed that if he just kept trying over and over, someone in his family would finally acknowledge him. Up on the sunlit upper balcony, his father stood watching the courtyard in total silence. Wow, look at that world-class fatherly support. He's looking down at his exhausted son like he's observing a defective lawn ornament. Looking up with genuine hope in his bright blue eyes, Ferda wiped the sweat from his reddened face and offered a soft, desperate smile. He craved even a single word of warmth or approval from the man who gave him life. Suddenly, a mockingly sweet voice broke the quiet afternoon air, completely shattering the young boy's moment of hope. Arrogantly resting his heavy steel sword across his shoulder, Ferda's half-brother stepped into the light with a condescending smirk. He mockingly questioned if a weakling was actually trying to undergo legitimate night training. Looming over Ferda while pointing his long blade downward, the half-brother snorted in disgust, declaring that a pathetic concubine's child didn't even possess the basic right to try. Tears welled up in young Ferda's bright eyes as his brother sneered that someone bearing those filthy blue eyes would never be welcomed among real knights. Gasp! Imagine discriminating against your own younger brother just because of his eye color. Talk about absolute villain behavior. Watching his arrogant brother walk away, Ferda panted heavily through his bruised lips and turned his gaze back toward the high study window. But as Ferda looked up, his cold father turned his back away without a second thought, completely cutting off any hope of redemption. Left alone in the cold shadow of the courtyard, Ferda realized in utter silence that his family had given up on him long ago. Returning to the present inside the dimly lit office, Ferda looks his father straight in the eyes and calmly announces that he will leave the family instead of accepting the engagement. His father's harsh, calculated face remains utterly unbothered, showing neither surprise nor a shred of lingering regret for driving his own son away. Without a single hint of hesitation, the patriarch's cold voice echoes through the silent chamber with a brief, dismissive agreement. Moments later, the colossal iron gates of the Roznova estate slam shut behind Ferda with a loud, echoey bang, locking him out in the cold twilight. Standing outside the massive iron fence with only a small, flimsy sack over his shoulder, Ferda listens to his father's final chilling declaration echoing over the walls, that he is no longer considered a Roznova. Looking down at his trembling, calloused hands, Ferda stares at the rough scars earned through endless years of unrewarded training. Deep down, he knew his father was fully aware of how painfully hard he had worked. A sinister crimson light suddenly flares within Ferda's dark pupils, clenches his hand into a tight fist as murderous killing intent bursts from his core. Blackness completely swallows his vision as a single, unforgiving oath burns inside his mind. He will never, ever forgive the family that cast him aside. Screaming through his internal darkness, Ferda vows to make every single member of the Roznova house burn with agonizing regret for throwing him away like garbage. Walking down the desolate cobblestone path under a blood-red sky, dark wisps of demonic aura trail off Ferda's body like living shadows. This is the exact moment a neglected victim transforms into the continent's worst nightmare, and I am 100% here for this villain arc. Skipping ahead through time, complex blue and red magical circles glow brightly across the ancient slate boards as Ferda officially awakens his dormant magic at 18 years old. But even at the Magic Academy, Ferda faces constant mockery. Knocked onto the damp stone floor near an overturned water bucket, an arrogant apprentice jabs a black magic wand directly at his chest, laughing at him for starting magic training at such an old age. Surrounding him with malicious sneers, the senior apprentices mockingly snicker that his stiff brain will take decades just to grasp the absolute basics of spellcasting. Traditional academy texts explicitly teach that every mage relies on their pure inner peace and spiritual strength as their primary driving force. Standing up with blood dripping down his clothes, Ferda flashes a terrifying dark smile that instantly sends a wave of sheer terror through his bullies' hearts. The panicking students stumble back in horror as thick, dark red mana violently bleeds through the air around him. A blood-red magic circle blazes behind Ferda's head as a dark crimson sphere of raw death magic condenses between his fingers. The lead bully gasps in utter horror, realizing Ferda has bypassed basic elemental magic to unlock a lethal red circle. Because Ferda's magical foundation doesn't draw from peaceful meditation, his core is fueled entirely by pure, unadulterated hatred and vengeful rage. Stepping over the battered, unconscious bodies of his former bullies strewn across the shattered room, dark red energy crackles violently across Ferda's body. The deeper his hatred runs, the exponentially stronger his magic becomes. Fueled entirely by his obsessive desire for vengeance, Ferda rapidly ascends to the prestigious Sixth Circle, officially becoming a terrifying archmage. With ultimate power in his hands, there is only one destination left for him to target. The family that cast him out into the cold, the Roznova house, becomes the sole objective of his destructive campaign. Descending upon the Roznova estate under a crimson night sky, Ferda unleashes a terrifying curse that forces the arrogant servants who once insulted him to butcher each other in a frantic frenzy. Screams for mercy echo off the bloody walls as the mansion turns into a slaughterhouse. Turning his dark focus toward his noble brothers, Ferda manipulates their minds until the eldest and second sons drive their blades into each other's chests, leaving them dead on the carpet in mutual destruction. Bro didn't just kill his enemies, he turned their own family feud into a self-destruct button. Finally stepping into the grand office, Ferda stands over his trembling father, who slumps in his chair, whimpering in total horror for a swift death. Clamping his hand around his father's throat with an iron grip, Ferda leans in close with a cold, predatory gaze. He demands that his father keep his eyes open to witness the bloody extinction of the proud house he built. Wide across the destroyed study, sunlight streams over the lifeless bodies of the nobility, leaving Ferda standing victorious amid the bloody ruin of his ancestral home. Though every single noble and servant tied to the Roznova name has been wiped off the face of the earth, the darkness inside Ferda's heart remains completely unsated. Glancing sideways with blood splatter covering his neck, Ferda exhales a soft, empty breath into the quiet room. Suddenly, a sharp red spark violently crackles across his dark purple pupil once again. His unquenchable hatred and rage never cooled down for a single moment. Instead, it began spreading like a wildfire across the entire continent. Enraged by his brutal massacre, famous heroes and legendary warriors drew their holy blades against Ferda, shouting that the enemy of the continent must be executed for his monstrous crimes. Standing high atop the jagged cliff canyon under a full moon, dozens of elite warriors and grand archmages aim their weapons directly down at Ferda's dark hooded silhouette. Now this is how you set up an epic regression story, from an abused child to a world-ending archmage surrounded by the entire continent's army. What happens when you spend your entire life climbing to the pinnacle of magic, standing victorious over kings, only to realize the source of your revenge is waiting for a completely different end? After surviving endless bloodshed and reaching the 8th circle, this dark archmage thought he had finally conquered fate itself. But supreme power brings no peace, only an endless target on your back. Man spent every single stat point on dark magic, yet his face looks like he hasn't slept in 3 centuries. He knows the survivors are constantly lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next moment to take his head. Knowing his enemies could strike at any moment, he decides the only way to stay alive is to push beyond the boundaries of human limitations. He buries himself deep within ancient forbidden scriptures, searching frantically for a method to ascend into the 9th circle, the untouchable realm of demigods. Because in a world ruled by monsters and backstabbers, ordinary master-level strength isn't enough. He demands total, overwhelming dominance. Turning through the blood-stained pages, his hands freeze as his eyes land on an ancient creature drawn in crimson ink, a legendary red dragon. He drives a dagger straight through the dragon's heart on the parchment. Talk about extreme anger management. Guy's literally stabbing a piece of paper like it personally owes him money. Guided by his burning hatred, he travels under the cold night sky to the desolate mountain peak where the ancient tyrant resides. Blood drips slowly onto the frozen stone floor as he finally steps into the cavern, facing the giant red dragon Valdrova. The massive beast gazes down at him with quiet sorrow. The dragon slowly lowers its massive tail, sighing in tragic realization that the human once chosen to be its fiancé has returned to claim its life. Coughing up blood from intense mana strain, the dark mage grits his teeth, trying to suppress his physical breakdown. Sparks of destructive energy ignite across his hand as he demands the tyrant die quietly by his power. Valdrova turns her colossal head, asking in a gentle, rumbling voice why he harbors such deep, unforgiving hatred. The dragon explains that she has remained hidden away from humanity for generations, never harming a soul. She genuinely cannot comprehend what grudge brought him all this way. You did nothing? The archmage's mind completely snaps as his eye blazes with furious light. Pointing a trembling finger, he screams that her foolish demand for a human companion ruined his entire life and got him cast out of his family. Wow. Imagine getting kicked out of your noble household because a giant dragon put you on her wedding registry. The dragon softly questions if that was truly her fault, but he cuts her off with a deafening yell. Veins bulge across his face as he vents decades of built-up torment, claiming her very existence cursed him to a life of misery. Valdrova's giant red claw twitches slightly on the stone as she whispers a quiet, heartbreaking realization. Noticing this subtle shift in her body language, the archmage hesitates for a split second, wondering what just happened. Shrugging off his suspicion, dark mana surges violently around his body. He used her paws to gather enough mana for his ultimate spell. The red dragon stands tall, her golden eyes burning brightly as she whispers that she finally understands his suffering. Without warning, she swings her razor-sharp claw downward with terrifying speed. Believing she's attacking, the mage frantically deploys a massive arcane magic circle to shield himself. A drop of blood drips down near his wide eye as he realizes the blow wasn't directed at him at all. Valdrova plunges her own massive claw directly into her chest with a sickening crunch. Wait, hold on. Did this dragon just pull an ultimate self-destruct move right in the middle of a boss fight? Stunned in absolute disbelief, the mage stares blankly as the dragon willingly stabs her own chest. Her golden eye gazes down at him softly, remembering that reaching the demigod 9th circle requires a genuine dragon's heart. Sheer desperation takes over as he realizes she's trying to destroy her core. Stop! He roars in complete panic. Blinding, radiant energy bursts from between her giant talons as she squeezes her glowing heart. I won't let you destroy it, he bellows, sprinting forward while attempting to cast a mana-binding spell. Fissures of blinding light split across the dragon's chest scale armor. An explosive shockwave of fire and magic detonates with a thunderous roar right as he extends his hand. The colossal red beast staggers back from the impact, smoke and sparks pouring from her wound. A final flare of blinding golden light erupts from her claw. Valdrova collapses heavily onto the cavern floor, falling motionless. The mage scrambles over, frantically searching through the smoke for the heart. As the dust clears, his eyes widen in total shock as a brilliant reflection catches his sight. Floating gently above the dragon's palm lies the pristine, intact golden dragon heart, pulsing with infinite magical power. He stands frozen on the stone floor, utterly speechless as to why she surrendered her own life source without resisting. Holding his breath, he asks Valdrova why she went this far when she could have easily crushed him. Opening her weary eyes, she softly explains that she offered her life simply because she was the reason he became miserable. Her consciousness fades into a distant memory, floating through a shimmering realm of light. She confesses that for centuries, she loathed herself and the violent dragon blood running through her veins. Gritting her teeth in recollection, she remembers how the uncontrollable urge to rage burned inside her like an inescapable curse. Raging infernos reduced cities to ashes while she watched in helpless horror, unable to stop her own destruction. Terrified villagers fled screaming from her human form, confirming her belief that her death was the only true peace for the world. The artist really pulled out all the stops for this backstory. Look at those dramatic fire embers. Yet, despite the curse, her soul desperately clung to life, dreaming of finding true happiness and a warm companion. A single golden tear trickles down her dragon face, reflecting centuries of solitude. Looking at the Archmage one last time, she prays that through her sacrifice, he can finally find the happiness he was robbed of. Her massive claw falls completely lifeless onto the stone as total silence fills the cavern, leaving the mage staring in stunned silence. Dark magic flares across his face as blood drips onto his cheek, leaving a deep, bitter ache in his chest that he never anticipated. Gritting his teeth in painful frustration, he curses Valdrova for shaking his resolve at the very end of his path. Staring at her lifeless form on the stone, he forces himself forward to reclaim the glowing golden dragon heart floating above her palm. Lifting the radiant core toward the cavern ceiling, he prepares to consume the ancient dragon's raw magical essence. Manda's about to eat a glowing heart whole like it's a glorified energy snack. Blinding light erupts from his mouth and throat as he forces the heart's power directly into his soul. A massive surge of divine energy shatters human limits, transcending him into the untouchable ninth circle demigod realm. Thunderous shockwaves shatter stone pillars throughout the cavern as his power explodes into pure golden light. Suddenly, his spirit is pulled into a vast, glowing realm of light, leaving him floating weightlessly in space. Floating down into an endless spiritual void, he wonders if this crushing weight is the price of taking her heart. Deep within the void, he sees the tragic spiritual memory of Valdrova huddled in solitude. A bolt of raw emotional lightning pierces his mind, flooding his soul with her ancient memories and centuries of silent pain. The crushing weight of her emotions drops him to his knees on the stone floor. Gasping for air with wide, trembling eyes, the reality of what he destroyed hits him like a freight train. He sees her true soul, a lonely, gentle spirit who, despite ancient despair, only wished to love and be accepted. Talk about maximum emotional damage. He spent 3 centuries grinding for revenge against someone who just wanted a friend. Floating in the quiet void, he realizes his decades of petty hatred were completely insignificant next to her centuries of silent suffering. Tears stream down his bloodied face as he breaks down, asking himself what monstrous mistake he has committed. Looking back into his own past, he catches a glimpse of his innocent childhood self sitting at a sunlit window desk. He remembers sitting silently as a little boy, carefully drawing with crayons under the bright morning sun. The young boy holds his crayon tightly, trying with all his heart to draw the warmth he never received from his noble family. A simple crayon drawing of a loving, smiling family reveals the simple happiness he originally desired before hatred consumed him. His spirit watches his younger self, realizing that all along, he only wanted genuine love and belonging. Seeing Valdrova sitting by her window looking toward the sky, he realizes she shared that exact same dream of finding warmth and connection. Bitter regret fills his chest as he chuckles darkly at how futile his endless war for power really was. Standing over her motionless body on the cold cavern floor, sadly realizes his victorious revenge brought him nothing but empty sorrow. Drops of blood and tears splash onto the floor as he stares blankly at his bloodstained hands. Suddenly, ancient runes ignite across the air as he remembers the single ultimate spell granted to a ninth circle demigod. Wish! Kneeling within a massive golden spell circle, he unleashes all his demigod power to rewrite time itself. Darkness consumes his vision before a stern, familiar voice echoes out, snapping his eyes wide open. Blinding sunlight streams through tall office windows, revealing a grand mansion room he hasn't seen in centuries. Sitting behind the oak desk, his cold, noble father reprimands him for daydreaming while being addressed. Gazing at his cruel father alive and well, Ferda realizes the wish spell actually regressed him back to his youth. His father sternly announces that his political engagement to Grand Duke Valdrova has been officially finalized. Shadow covers Ferda's eyes as he listens to the exact conversation that once ruined his entire life. His father arrogantly warns that refusing this marriage will result in total banishment from the noble house. Ferda takes a firm step forward on the polished wooden floor, confirming that he really did rewind time. Standing tall with calm composure, Ferda cuts off his father's threats before he can even finish. Visions of the legendary Red Dragon float behind his mind as he prepares to make a completely different choice this time. Placing his hand over his chest with unshakable resolve, Ferda calmly declares that he formally accepts the engagement. Father was ready to hit him with a full villain speech, but Ferda just speed ran the acceptance. Rays of sunlight illuminate the grand estate hall as Ferda turns on his heel to prepare for his new journey. News travels fast through the mansion corridors as his arrogant second brother, Huron Roznova, hears about the acceptance. Huron questions his butler in disbelief, knowing Ferda usually begs and throws a tantrum over tough situations. The butler confirms Ferda dismissed all his personal servants and locked himself inside his bedchamber. Smirking with toxic satisfaction, Huron decides to head straight to Ferda's room to mock his despair. Fast footsteps echo down the quiet hallway as Huron struts toward the bedroom door. Huron slams the wooden door open with a loud burst, yelling at Ferda to see why he hasn't panicked yet. Huron's arrogant grin instantly freezes in utter confusion as his jaw drops. Standing before the tall dressing mirror, Ferda is fully dressed in a crisp, elegant noble suit, calmly packing his luggage. Adjusting his collar, Ferda glances back sideways, calmly advising his older brother to learn basic manners and knock next time. Flustered and confused, Huron stammers, asking why he's dressing himself, while Ferda coldly replies he's getting used to taking care of himself. Huron narrows his eyes, wondering why his pathetic brother suddenly acts like a completely different person, before mockingly asking if he truly understands what marrying a dragon Grand Duke implies. Little does bro know, Ferda literally spent 300 years fighting that dragon and just time traveled from the future. Ferda looks completely indifferent as he informs his second brother that accepting the marriage arrangement simply means his father is banishing him from the noble house. Huron sputters in disbelief, waving his hands around as he insists that this engagement is a literal death sentence, and questions if Ferda even knows why the Grand Duke's fiancé position has remained vacant for so long. Lowering his gaze with cool composure, Ferda calmly replies that he understands the situation far better than anyone else realizes. A royal portrait reveals that Valdrova's very first fiancé was none other than the revered third prince of the Arkan Empire. Oh yes, bring out the historical documentary slideshow to explain why marrying a dragon is bad health insurance. The third prince was hailed as the absolute peak of perfection, possessing unmatched intellect, striking looks, and massive popularity, even surrendering his right to the throne just to wed the dragon. But despite all his grandiose charm, within a single day of stepping foot into her grand domain, the legendary prince was utterly pummeled into a bloody pulp without mercy. Bro really gave up his entire kingdom just to get comboed by a dragon on day one? Huron aggressively points his finger in Ferda's face, mocking him for thinking he could somehow survive an engagement that destroyed the imperial prince. Shaking his head smugly, Huron chuckles that nobody can stop a foolish idiot who actively wants to jump straight into a dragon's maw. Cracking his knuckles menacingly, Huron warns Ferda not to pull any tricks or run away, threatening to personally decapitate him before Valdrova gets the chance. Ferda turns his eyes toward his brother with sub-zero intensity, calmly telling Huron that he should focus on keeping his own pants zipped instead. Oh snap, Ferda brought zero weapons to this meeting except absolute verbal atomic bombs. Ferda openly exposes Huron's dirty secret about how he creeps on their eldest brother's wife, causing Huron's face to flush red as veins burst across his forehead in total rage. Outraged, Huron rears back to strike him, but gets restrained by a servant, while Ferda casually clasps his hands, advising him to restrain his violent urges. Glancing back with a refined, sparkling smile, Ferda remarks that unlike their childhood days, it would be quite troublesome if his handsome face got ruined right before his wedding. Carrying his packed travel suitcase, Ferda walks out through the grand estate gates toward an awaiting carriage. The old butler dabs his eyes with a handkerchief, tearfully proclaiming what an immense honor it was to serve the young master all these years. Watching the old man's emotional performance, Ferda inwardly scoffs at his blatant lies, remembering how this fake loyal servant repeatedly poisoned his meals in his past life. Flashbacks show a frail, bedridden young Ferda while the shady butler secretly dropped lethal toxin into his medicine. Nothing screams loving household like getting daily dosage updates from your own staff. In his original timeline, a vengeful adult Ferda brutally choked the hypocritical butler to death for his crimes. Returning to the present, Ferda gently places his hand on the butler's shoulder with an unreadable expression. Ferda softly thanks the old butler for taking care of someone like him for so long, leaving the old man utterly stunned and confused. Looking up at the bright blue sky, Ferda instructs the servant to take good care of the Roznova family in his absence. The heavy wooden carriage rolls through the estate gates, leaving the toxic noble household far behind in the dust. Resting inside the comfortable cabin, Ferda smiles softly, reflecting on how taking complete revenge in his past life has left his heart at absolute peace. Man completed his revenge bucket list in Timeline 1, so now he's just on a cozy vacation arc. Sunlight glimmers through the dense forest canopy as the carriage smoothly travels along the mountain dirt path. He leans back against the leather seat, realizing that the overwhelming rage and burning desire for vengeance have completely vanished from his soul. Staring outside, he recalls how the dark magic he once wielded felt like a corrupting drug that slowly destroyed his sanity. In his previous life, the euphoric surge of dark power felt amazing at first, but as his body built tolerance, the uncontrollable corruption consumed him into an unhinged monster. His mind recalls the terrifying smirk of his former self, consumed by the absolute addiction of dark spellcraft. He envisions the golden, glowing dragon heart pulsing in the palm of his hands from the moment of his regressive wish spell. Closing his eyes in quiet self-reflection, Ferda realizes he never wants to sink back into that dark, hollow abyss ever again. Sinking deeper into his seat, he resolves to live this second chance differently, rejecting the path of dark magic. Exhaling a long, peaceful breath, he appreciates the sweet taste of quiet tranquility for the first time in centuries. Suddenly, the terrified coachman yanks the reins and screams that they have finally arrived at the boundary. Coachman dropped him off faster than a delivery driver leaving a package in the rain. A weathered wooden boundary sign clearly warns that beyond this point lies the Grand Duke's domain, where unauthorized entry is strictly forbidden. Ferda casually sits down on his luggage beside the forest sign, watching as the surrounding woods rustle in total isolation. The terrified driver whips the horses and bolts away at full speed, shouting for his master to somehow stay alive. Left completely alone in the wilderness, Ferda chuckles that while being free of family surveillance is nice, he might still need basic fourth circle defensive magic of wild beasts attack. Suddenly, a gentle breeze rustles the leaves as a sharp presence catches Ferda's attention. A dark maid silhouette emerges through the foggy forest foliage, confirming her sudden arrival. Stepping forward with flawless grace, a beautiful silver-haired maid curtsies, introducing herself as Ruri, loyal attendant to Lady Valdrova. Ruri looks up with calm, sharp eyes, asking if the young man sitting on the suitcase is Lord Ferda Roznova. Ferda confirms his identity as Ruri gestures toward the imposing ancient dragon castle looting atop the misty mountain peaks. Historical chronicles describe how the Arkan Empire believed its military might was completely invincible under the sun. Classic fantasy empire thinking they own the world until nature drops a dragon on them. However, the eastern territory of the continent, known as the Land of Demons, was an infested hellscape of lethal monsters that humanity could never conquer. The sole force that crushed the terrifying demon hordes and established the front lines was the legendary Red Dragon Valdrova. Following Ruri through the forest path, Ferda realizes the public slander calling Valdrova a demonic beast is completely unearned considering her historic sacrifices. Ravenous shadow wolves lurk between the trees, highlighting the vicious rumors that she secretly raises a monster army. In a split second, Ruri draws a massive blade and obliterates the attacking beasts in a single blinding shockwave. Wait a minute, the maid is casually out here dropping anime ultimate moves on wild wolves? Sheathing her weapon flawlessly, Ruri glances back with absolute calmness, assuring Ferda that he has nothing to worry about under her protection. Ruri channels glowing green magic around her hands, reassuring Ferda that as long as he stays close to her side, none of the surrounding beasts will dare approach them. Ferda politely thanks her for the protection. Walking through the dense dark woods, Ferda inquires how much further they have to trek on foot, to which Ruri calmly answers that it will take roughly another 2 hours. Ruri casually remarks that if she were traveling alone, a brief 10-second flight would easily get her back to the castle. Struggling behind her with a heavy wooden trunk and a makeshift walking stick, Ferda wipes the sweat off his brow, inwardly realizing that this girl is definitely no ordinary human maid. A detailed view reveals Ruri's true form, complete with shimmering dragon scales, a massive tail extending under her skirt, and sharp horns atop her head. Man, forget a basic maid service. This castle comes with a literal high-level dragon bodyguard on duty. Ruri abruptly halts her footsteps along the dirt path, contemplating their situation. Wobbling under the weight of his travel trunk, Ferda breathlessly suggests that they take flight to the dragon's lair together instead. Ruri glances back sideways, asking if that means she would have to carry him all the way up. Ferda stammers that he can manage air travel just fine, but Ruri deadpans with complete indifference, plainly stating that she simply doesn't feel like carrying him. Ouch! Denied with zero hesitation by the dragon maid. An awkward silence falls over the trail as Ferda stands trembling under his luggage, while Ruri stares at him with an unreadable poker-faced gaze. Sweat dropping with an awkward grin, Ferda asks if they can at least take a quick breather after walking for so long. Dismissive, but Ruri coldly orders him to keep moving because her master is waiting. Looking up at the grand castle perched high atop the cliff against the fiery sunset, Ferda chuckles to himself that getting married is turning out to be quite an ordeal. Arriving at the formidable castle entrance, Ruri raises her gloved hand and knocks heavily against the massive wooden doors. The towering front gates groan open, revealing a vast dark hallway as Ruri formally announces that the fiancé has finally arrived. Trembling as he gazes into the dark abyss beyond the gates, Ferda realizes that the sheer aura of a dragon alone is exerting an almost suffocating pressure on his entire body. Ruri slips through a side door into the inner sanctum, telling Ferda to wait outside and receive her master's message strictly through her. When Ferda asks if they can just speak face to face, Ruri turns back with a chilling look. Her eyes narrow into sharp red slits as she coldly questions if a mere mortal honestly thinks he is worthy enough to stand directly before her Grand Master. Ferda calmly agrees and tells her to proceed. With an abrupt shift back to flawless maid etiquette, Ruri clasps her hands together with sparkling grace, clears throat to deliver the Grand Duke's official message. A gigantic holographic projection of the red dragon Valdrova materializes behind Ruri, commending Ferda for having the courage to reach her domain despite knowing her brutal nature. Nothing says welcome home quite like a gigantic red dragon hologram looking at you like lunch. The colossal dragon head lowers itself right in front of Ferda, radiating an overwhelming pressure that fills the entire corridor. Staring blankly at the spectral dragon, Ferda inwardly ponders why he traveled all this way just to be turned away at the front door. Glancing at his own hand, Ferda reflects that in his past life, he would have instantly accepted the rejection and fled for his life, but things are entirely different now. Sinking into deep composure, Ferda resolves that even though this arrangement was originally forced upon him by his family, standing here today is a choice he made for himself. Stepping forward with absolute conviction, Ferda loudly announces that he refuses to return and fully intends to proceed with the engagement, causing Ruri's jaw to drop in total shock. Silence hangs in the room until Ferda asks if she plans to relay his words, prompting a deep, mysterious voice from beyond the doorway to agree. Suddenly, a massive leather sack stuffed to the brim with glittering gold coins gets dragged out onto the stone floor. Ruri drops that massive heavy sack right at Ferda's feet, reciting that if returning home is difficult for him, her master is willing to grant him a fortune in gold to leave peacefully. Sitting amidst the glowing mountain of gold coins, Ferda looks directly at the dragon projection and boldly declares that he has zero interest in material wealth or power. Gently extending his hand forward with elegant poise, Ferda prepares to give his ultimate response. Ferda formally bows on one knee toward the giant red dragon, soft-spokenly confessing that his one and only true interest is his engagement to Grand Duke Valdrova. Bro just turned down a mountain of gold just to commit to a dragon marriage. Talk about living life on maximum difficulty. Ruri lets out a heavy, exasperated sigh, her polite persona completely evaporating into pure frustration. Ruri rears her fist back and strikes the air with terrifying velocity. Pointing her clawed finger straight at Ferda's chest, Ruri furiously commands him to stop wasting her time and leave the castle grounds immediately. Ferda calmly points out that her tone sounds far too short to be an official message from the Grand Duke, and Ruri snaps back that this warning comes directly from her as an attendant. Green magical energy erupts around Ruri as her dragon horns and tail flare up, threatening to violently throw him out if he refuses to leave. A fierce gust of wind slams into Ferda, causing him to cross his arms defensively as he recognizes the raw, crushing weight of dragon fear. Hovering menacingly above him while he is pinned to the floor, Ruri growls that she knows mortals are nothing but greedy trash who seek to exploit Lady Valdrova for power and ambition. Wincing under the suffocating pressure, Ferda suddenly connects the dots, finally understanding the true reason behind the third prince's fatal beating. Ruri coldly confirms his suspicion, explaining that the arrogant prince's head was filled with dirty schemes to manipulate the Dragon Grand Duke for political leverage. Flashbacks show the greedy prince kneeling among royal documents. Flashbacks depict Valdrova's giant glowing eyes staring down in absolute disgust at the imperial prince's hidden corporate greed. Ruri steps forward with cold, deliberate footsteps, her eyes completely shadowed in wrath. Ruri slams her foot down right next to Ferda, pinning him beneath her ferocious dragon pressure as she declares that in her eyes, he is no different from that foolish prince, whom man is currently getting interrogated by a dragon maid who can flatten a mountain. No pressure at all. Glaring down with razor-sharp claws, Ruri asks if he truly wants to suffer the same tragic, bloody end as the imperial prince for trying to deceive her master. Despite the terrifying threat hovering over him, Ferda offers a gentle, unbothered smile that completely catches Ruri off guard. Ruri's eyes widen in shock as Ferda looks her straight in the face, swearing on his name that he carries absolutely zero deceit in his heart. Pinned against the floor, Ferda firmly states that he was not forced here by anyone's coercion, nor is he seeking any personal gain from this marriage. Memories flood Ferda's mind, recalling the tragic moment at the end of their 300-year battle when the Red Dragon willingly surrendered her glowing heart to his corrupt past self. Holding out his hands as soft light radiates from his palms, Ferda tenderly vows that since she once gave her heart to his selfish self, he will stand by her side this time. Looking into Ruri's stunned eyes, Ferda quietly suggests that since they are destined to become husband and wife, Valdrova should speak with him directly rather than hiding behind an attendant. Ruri's clawed hand trembles violently as veins top across her skin, her inner rage boiling over at his unshakable confidence. Completely enraged, Ruri rears back her sharp claws to strike him down, screaming how dare this arrogant mortal spout such insane nonsense in her presence. Just inches before her sharp claws crush him, Ruri violently freezes in midair, her entire body shaking as Ferda's words hit her like a ton of bricks. Snapping back into her spotless maid demeanor, Ruri steps back, bows at a crisp 90-degree angle, and politely asks him to pardon her while she goes to report. Clasped hands surrounded by twinkling sparks, Ruri puts on a flawless customer service smile, preparing to relay his exact response to her master. Talk about an instant personality switch from terrifying monster to model maid in under a second. Deep within the shadowed cavern, Ruri kneels before a colossal draconic outline, repeating Ferda's bold declaration word for word. Addressing the grand shadow in the cave, Ruri formally hails the Red Dragon Valdrova as the absolute peak of power among the 12 rulers. Glowing red aura flares up as a gorgeous crimson-haired dragon woman speaks with sheer intrigue, asking if the mortal truly uttered those words. Sitting atop the rugged cavern stone, Grand Duke Valdrova tilts her head, genuinely fascinated by a human brave enough to speak with such fearlessness. When Valdrova asks how the fiancé seemed during their journey, Ruri deadpans, picturing Ferda trembling and wheezing under his luggage like he was at death's door. Switching into petty chibi mode, Ruri blurts out that he's hideously ugly and should be kicked out, only for Valdrova to immediately call her name in disbelief. Sweat dropping, Ruri quickly fixes her statement, admitting he actually has a pretty face that probably broke a few hearts, prompting Valdrova to tell her that wasn't what she was asking. Ruri is out here giving a full romance review instead of a threat assessment. An awkward pause settles between the two dragon women as Ruri pouts silently under her master's unreadable stare. Letting out a soft exhale, Ruri finally drops her pettiness and admits that the young noble is undeniably unusual. Ruri reminds her master that as a pure dragon spawn, overwhelming a basic human with sheer terror should be completely effortless. Yet, as she recalls slamming Ferda against the cracked stone floor, she admits that he didn't display even a single drop of fear under her suffocating aura. Bowing her head, Ruri concludes that this human is certainly capable of standing face to face and locking eyes directly with the Grand Duke. A quiet chuckle echoes through the cavern, causing Ruri's eyes to widen in utter surprise. Valdrova lets out a soft declaration, calling his bravery absolutely splendid. Rising gracefully from her throne of rock, the Crimson Dragon ruler praises a mortal capable of meeting her gaze without flinching. With a subtle smile playing across her lips, Valdrova decides that they can meet him directly in person. Ruri stares back completely dumbfounded, unable to believe her master wants to greet a mere human normally. Valdrova reaffirms her order with calm authority, confirming that she intends to host him like an actual guest. Returning to the grand corridor outside, Ruri delivers the news to Ferda, formally announcing that her master has accepted to proceed with the engagement. Bro literally passed the vibe check just by staring down a maid. Guiding him through the towering Gothic hallways, Ruri leads the way to the castle's guest quarters. Stepping into the room, Ferda looks around in surprise at the sparkling, perfectly maintained master bedroom. Ferda asks who keeps such a massive place so ridiculously spotless, to which Ruri cold shoulders him while fluffing a pillow, stating she handles it all herself. Glaring back at him, Ruri reminds Ferda that she is her master's sole attendant, addressing him strictly as guest. When Ferda points out that he's supposed to be the fiancé, Ruri snaps back that without an official wedding ceremony, he's nothing more than guest number one. Wiping his cheek as Ruri fumes like an angry guard dog in the background, Ferda chuckles to himself that she really is a loyal protector. Having a dragon maid treat you like an intruder is just daily life for this guy now. Cutting straight through the passive-aggressive commentary, Ferda asks when the actual engagement ceremony will take place, and Ruri reveals it is set for 1 month from now. A grand vision shows the upcoming ceremony held deep within the dragon's lair, with only the couple and Ruri officiating the sacred vow. Ferda nods along quietly, processing the timeline in his head. Stroking his chin in deep thought, Ferda realizes that a single month provides him with enough time to prepare. Standing silently with her arms crossed, Ruri glares at his calm composure with growing annoyance. Smirking arrogantly, Ruri taunts him, asking if he expected the ceremony on a silver platter, revealing that this month is actually his final deadline to prove his worth. Thrusting her fingers straight toward his chest, Ruri boldly declares that the Grand Duke's partner must hold a standing worthy of her power. She orders him point blank to prove that he actually possesses the qualifications to stand beside her master. Sweat dropping at the sudden challenge, Ferda inwardly remarks that getting married in this world is turning out to be a full-blown survival trial. Ferda questions if a maid has the authority to issue such strict conditions, but Ruri proudly claims the decision as her own responsibility. She explains that her master is far too soft-hearted, so as her attendant, she will personally filter out anyone unworthy. Clenching her hand tightly, Ruri demands that Ferda demonstrate whether his weak human body has any actual potential hiding inside. A sinister vision displays the throne of the Grand Duke surrounded by dark draconic power, warning that failure means permanent rejection. No pressure at all, just gotta impress a dragon maid or get thrown out like trash. Closing his eyes with complete calm, Ferda thoughtfully absorbs her harsh ultimatum. Instead of getting angry, Ferda feels genuine respect, realizing his future wife has an exceptionally devoted servant looking out for her. He recognizes that even though Ruri clearly despises him, every single demand she makes comes from pure loyalty to her master's standing. Memories of his past life flash before his eyes, recalling the tragic day when the massive red dragon surrendered her glowing heart directly to him. Looking back up, Ferda casually inquires how high he needs to climb, asking if he needs to go ahead and conquer the entire empire to satisfy her. Ruri answers that he simply mustn't be looked down upon by other rulers, prompting Ferda to chuckle that she's asking for potential higher than an emperor's. Smiling with unshakable confidence, Ferda accepts the challenge without a second thought, leaving Ruri staring in complete, utter shock at his relaxed attitude. Chibi-Ruri explodes in fury, screaming whether he underestimates dragons or is just a total fool, but Ferda casually dismisses both. Extending his gloved hand with complete grace, Ferda promises that within 30 days, he will display more than enough power to satisfy both her and the Grand Duke. Ruri stands there completely speechless, staring at him with a deadpan expression as sweat drips down her cheek. She can't wrap her head around where this fragile human gets such outrageous, unshakable confidence. As night settles over the territory, the grand Gothic fortress stands bathed in the cold glow of the full moon, dead quiet against the starry sky. Back inside his master bedroom, Ferda paces across the ornate carpet, reflecting heavily on Ruri's ultimatum. He admits to himself that right now, in this current body, he possesses virtually no actual power. Yet, as he looks down at his hand and conjures a tiny flicker of light, he remembers his past life as a legendary archmage. He achieved the legendary 9th circle back then, and if his core instincts still remain intact, rebuilding his foundation is totally doable. Must be nice having a cheat code memory from a past life whenever you need to cram for a deadline. He visualizes the intricate mana circuits required to form a mage's very first circle, knowing that this initial step dictates the entire nature of one's magic power. He ponders the standard path, forming a blue circle through calm, steady meditation. It takes a frustratingly long time, but its ultimate stability makes it the universal choice for orthodox mages. Then there's the high-risk alternative, a volatile red circle born straight out of rage and intense hatred. It grants explosive power of blinding speed, but it completely corrupts the mind, which is the exact dark path he walked in his past life. Flashback memories resurface of his former self standing over the fallen dragon in a tragic, blood-stained, ruined hall. Reclaiming his old, wrathful path would get him strong instantly, but he refuses to repeat those same tragic mistakes. Sarcastic. Bro is actively choosing the hard mode path just so he doesn't turn into an edgy villain again. Respect. He makes a firm vow to take an entirely different route this time around, refusing to let negative emotions govern his magic ever again. With a sharp, resolute glare, he vows to forge an unshakable foundation that will never falter, no matter what trial he faces. Fast forward 1 week later, bright morning sunlight breaks over the majestic towers of the Grand Duke's castle. Inside his quiet quarters, Ferda sits cross-legged on the polished floor, deeply immersed in peaceful meditation. Soft blue mana light crackles gently between his outstretched palms as he attempts to condense his very first blue circle. With a soft fizzle, the glowing aura completely dissolves into thin air, forcing Ferda to let out a tired sigh over yet another failed attempt. He rubs his forehead in frustration, remembering that constructing a pure blue circle normally takes an average mage 3 full years. Even with his past life memories guiding him, forcing his current unrefined body to mold orthodox mana is turning out to be way harder than expected. Imagine failing your magical homework when you literally used to be a max-level archmage. With a grim realization, he checks the calendar and realizes he only has 3 short weeks remaining before the official engagement ceremony. Suddenly, the door glides open as Ruri walks in wearing her pristine maid outfit, carrying a tray topped with a hot bowl of soup. She casually asks if he's actually making any progress. She places the hot vegetable stew on the table, deadpanning that despite all his grand talk, his physical body hasn't changed even a tiny bit. Ferda takes a spoon, taking a quiet bite of the warm meal while reassuring her that results will come in due time, though Ruri just glares at him with total skepticism. As he chews on a potato, he secretly admits to himself that she's totally right. He is making zero progress with standard meditation, and he desperately needs a completely different approach. Right on cue, a violent shudder quakes through the entire room, causing the windows to rattle and making Ferda pause mid-bite in utter surprise. Ferda asks what on earth is causing such a massive vibration, and Ruri calmly announces that her master is currently out conducting a monster subjugation. Nothing says cozy morning breakfast like the whole castle shaking from a dragon fighting monsters down the road. Ferda blinks in surprise, asking for clarification, and Ruri explains that Grand Duke Valdrova is personally slaughtering a horde of demonic beasts overflowing from the eastern land of demons. Hearing that his future wife is actively locked in a high-level battle, Ferda turns his eyes toward the distant horizon. Turning back to Ruri, Ferda boldly announces that he wants to head over and witness this battle with his own 2 eyes. Ruri glares back at him, sternly warning him to forget it, cautioning that a weak mortal human could never maintain their sanity while witnessing a dragon unleashed. She flat out mocks him, warning that unless he wants to embarrassingly wet his pants right before the engagement, he better stay put in his room. Maid Ruri really has zero chill when it comes to roasting her future master-in-law. Unbothered by her insult, Ferda stands tall and insists that witnessing her power is the fundamental duty of anyone who claims to be her future partner. Before he can even process what's happening, Ruri instantly teleports them to a windy cliff edge. Ferda drops onto his hands and knees, gasping for air, as Ruri gracefully hovers above him with massive dragon wings unfolded. Clutching his nauseous stomach as the sudden displacement wrecks his equilibrium, Ferda groans while Ruri coldly tells him to stop looking at her and focus on what's ahead. Slowly lifting his head, Ferda's eyes focus on the chaotic battlefield down below. He narrows his gaze as a thick, pitch-black miasma creeps over the distant valley. A terrifying wave of dark purple demonic energy swirls violently across the entire sky, choking the air with sheer malice. Ferda's eyes widen in absolute horror as he looks down into a massive ravine writhing with thousands of monstrous centipedes and giant armored snakes. Yeah, maybe staying in his room eating potato soup was the smarter play after all. The grotesque demonic beasts thrash violently against one another, their armored bodies slamming into the earth with terrifying force. Suddenly, a blazing fiery comet descends straight out of the heavens, obliterating the ground in a brilliant flash of roaring flames. The giant demonic centipedes screech in utter terror, violently recoiling as the massive heat wave scorches everything in sight. Razor-sharp crimson dragon claws slam down into the earth, crushing high-level monsters like simple bugs. The colossal red dragon opens her massive jagged jaws, revealing a blinding core of molten magma glowing inside her throat. She rears her towering neck backward, channeling an unfathomable amount of fiery draconic mana. She unleashes an apocalyptic torrent of pure incinerating fire breath, completely turning the entire canyon into a sea of absolute nuclear fire. Up on the cliff, fierce hot winds sweep across the terrain, whipping through Ruri's hair as she stands unfazed, watching her master's ultimate destructive display. Throwing her majestic head toward the heavens, the red dragon lets out a primordial dragon roar that tears through the fabric of the atmosphere. Standing triumphant atop the burning mountain peak, her colossal, draconic figure radiates pure, absolute dominance over the scorched earth below. The intense physical pressure hits Ferda like a physical freight train. He collapses to his knees, clutching his chest as his heart hammers violently inside his ribs. Sweat pours down his face as he stares at the horrifying display, mentally admitting that in his human state, he completely underestimated just how absurdly overpowered a Grand Duke dragon truly is. Bro really forgot that his future wife is literally a walking extinction-level event. Pinned to the grass under the suffocating aura of the dragon roar, Ferda gasps for air, his vision swimming under the sheer force of her voice. Ruri looks down at his trembling, collapsed form with a cold, unyielding gaze, asking if he finally understands the reality of his situation. She taunts him mercilessly, pointing out how laughable it is for a fragile mortal human to even dream of standing alongside such a divine dragon ruler. Looking back at the majestic red dragon blazing against the burning skyline, Ruri solemnly reminds him that this terrifying, world-shaking beast is the true form of the woman he claims he wants to marry. Ferda remains pinned to the dirt on his hands and knees, his entire frame shaking violently under the crushing weight of the dragon's presence, while Ruri stands unbothered above him. Ruri looks down at him with a cold, unimpressed gaze, reminding him that she explicitly warned him this would happen before bringing him out here. She takes a calm step forward as Ferda groans on the grass, explaining that deep within the veins of any red dragon flows what humans historically call the dark essence of the evil dragon. A terrifying vision of the red dragon's blazing jaws flashes in his mind, representing an insatiable, violent urge to kill that exists purely for absolute destruction. Talk about an intense family heritage. And I thought my in-laws were tough to get along with. Ruri brutally tells him that this destructive nature exists regardless of personality, warning that he will be crushed every single day and asking if he finally gets what it really means to partner with a dragon. Glowing with a soft magical light as she prepares to take them back, she turns away, softly murmuring that her master will soon realize that dreaming of a life with a fragile human is totally futile. But as Ferda's face comes into view, sweat dripping down his cheek, his lips slowly curl upward into a genuine smile. Staring up with bright, captivated eyes while clutching his chest pendant, Ferda whispers that the display was absolute perfection, leaving Ruri utterly flabbergasted. Ruri's face twitches in complete shock, baffled that instead of cowering in blind terror like a normal human, this guy's actually sitting there in pure awe. Bro took a direct hit from dragon fear and instantly became her biggest fan. You literally cannot make this up. Her face twists into sheer disgust as she shouts, asking if he's some kind of unhinged masochist for enjoying such horrifying pressure. Later that evening, back in the safety of his bed, Ferda lies flat on his back, covered in scratches and bruises, staring blankly at the ceiling. He sighs deeply, admitting to himself that his physical body is a complete disaster after taking a direct blast of dragon fear, followed by a devastating dragon roar. A funny recollection pops into his head of Chibi Ruri begrudgingly dusting off her hands after dragging his half-conscious body all the way back to his room. Give the maid a bonus, because carrying a defeated archmage back to bed was definitely not in her job description. He closes his eyes, acknowledging that it's a miracle his mind didn't snap completely, but worrying that losing an entire day of magic training is putting him severely behind schedule. A brilliant sphere of white light ignites in his subconscious mind, prompting him to ask himself why he was so eager to witness that apocalyptic battle in the first place. Sitting up with a sudden jolt, a sharp spark of inspiration flashes through his mind as he recalls every detail of the dragon's overwhelming display. He visualizes the majestic red dragon roaring amidst a sea of nuclear fire. Realizing that while it was terrifying beyond belief, he desperately wants to keep watching that level of absolute power. He envisions her hiding at the edge of the world, brutally tearing apart demonic beasts to shield the realm from total destruction. He sees the image of a noble red knight clad in fiery dragon armor, walking a solitary path of suffering and endless battle. Yes, the classic badass knight carrying the entire world on her back trope. No wonder our boy Ferda is smitten. Standing tall in his mental space with open arms, Ferda whispers in deep admiration over how truly magnificent her existence really is. Suddenly, a strange twitch ripples through his mana circuits. His eyes pop open in total shock as violent red energy crackles dangerously around his heart, signaling the sudden awakening of a red circle. Clutching his chest in agony as dark, shadowy memories of his wrathful past life loom behind him, Ferda struggles to reject the violent red mana, refusing to repeat his past mistakes. A crimson drop falls into the ocean of his mind, forming a brilliant reflection of the majestic red knight standing tall amid the waves. As Valdrova's fiery image fills his mind, he notices something miraculous. The more he focuses on her battle, the clearer and cleaner his chaotic mana circuits become. His tense expression softens as the burning pain transforms into a smooth, soothing current of energy flowing through his veins. Floating peacefully over a serene pool of red ripples, while a magnificent dragon aura takes shape behind him, Ferda wonders what this strange, unique emotion could possibly be. Recognizing that this delicate feeling will disappear if he doesn't capture it immediately, he gathers the swirling red galaxy of energy between his outstretched palms, spinning it at high speeds. With laser-focused concentration, he violently compresses the raw emotional aura, forcing it into a singular tight orbital ring. A flawless, radiant red circle bursts into existence above his palm, crackling with controlled red lightning as he resolves that this time around, his destiny will be completely different. Clenching his fist over his chest, he firmly vows that he will never repeat the same tragedy or let violent wrath corrupt his mind ever again. The next morning, Ruri nearly drops her tray in utter disbelief, gasping out if he actually managed to clear his blocked circuits overnight. Look at her face, she looks like she just saw a ghost instead of a guy finishing his magical homework. Ferda takes a calm bite of his food, complimenting her sharp observation, while Ruri stammers in disbelief, demanding to know how a guy who was half dead yesterday pulled off an impossible feat. Smugly closing his eyes, Ferda casually brags that he pulled it off because he's, simply built different, making Chibi Ruri give him the ultimate deadpan stare of judgment. Wiping his mouth with a cloth napkin, Ferda listens as Ruri begrudgingly admits that he has officially met the bare minimum qualifications to stand as her master's partner, though he modestly admits he still has a long way to go. He lowers the cloth with a sharp, determined look in his eyes. Dramatic whisper, ready to move straight on to the next stage of his training. Out in the bright castle courtyard, a clean training field stands fully equipped with 2 wooden target dummies. Dust flies into the air as the ground is swept perfectly smooth. Ruri proudly presents the setup with a broom in hand, striking a cute ta-da pose while announcing that the training grounds are fully prepared according to his exact specifications. Ferda lightly claps his hands in approval, praising her for single-handedly assembling a fully functional training zone in just half a day. Maid Ruri really is a one-woman construction crew. Give this girl a promotion already. Holding her broom, Ruri asks with genuine confusion why he only requested basic wooden dummies instead of high-grade magic tools, and Ferda explains that he needs to master efficient mana control so he doesn't waste energy. A giant question mark floats over Chibi Ruri's head as she tilts her neck, asking why anyone would ever need to train for something so basic, wondering if dragons are just built differently. A tiny floating speech bubble reveals her thought that for dragon spawn, training mana control sounds as ridiculous as taking lessons on how to breathe air. She warns him that if other high-ranking dragons heard him, they would mock his training as completely primitive, asking if he cares that his methods look primitive to her as well. Ferda just stares at her with a total deadpan poker face, remaining completely silent. In his head, Ferda dryly sighs, thinking to himself that a natural-born genius monster could never possibly comprehend the painstaking effort of a mortal human. Ah, the eternal struggle between genetic privilege and hard work. Every anime protagonist knows this pain. Walking toward the targets, he turns back and sarcastically tells her she's free to watch if she really wants to sit there and spectate someone breathing. Taking a sharp, balanced stance in front of the target dummy, he closes his eyes and takes a deep, controlled breath. Visualizing his internal core, he reminds himself that because his circle is red, he must unleash raw emotion while simultaneously keeping it under absolute, ruthless control. Recalling his past life, where drawing mana took a full year and another year to condense it into a sphere, he prepares to recreate the legendary mana bullet forged through blood and sweat. Recalling his past life, where condensing mana took endless, agonizing effort, now he condenses a pure, concentrated sphere of red energy on his fingertip in just 2 minutes flat. Maid Ruri stands frozen in complete disbelief, staring at the flawless sphere of compressed magic and wondering how a mere human managed perfect mana control on his very first try without wasting a single drop. With smooth precision, Ferda splits his condensed energy into 3 separate red spheres hovering in tight orbit around his hand. Locking onto the wooden training targets lined up across the yard, he calmly mutters the command to fire. A violent streak of red magical lightning shoots across the courtyard like a laser beam, striking the wooden target with pinpoint accuracy. The target dummy detonates into splintered wood as the compressed mana shot unleashes its hidden payload, blowing Maid Ruri's expectations completely out of the water. Pro just turned a wooden target into sawdust with a basic spell. Talk about overachieving. Flicking his hair with a smug sparkle in his eye, Ferda casually flexes that his ancient archmage instincts haven't rusted one bit, while Ruri stands behind him looking totally flabbergasted. She glares at him with intensely narrowed eyes, her suspicion growing deeper by the second as she evaluates this far from normal young lord. Later that evening, in a secluded cavern chamber, Ruri bows respectfully before Grand Duke Valdrova, delivering a full report on Ferda's terrifyingly fast awakening as a mage. Resting her head on her hand with an intriguing look, Valdrova asks Ruri for her honest assessment, wanting to know just how absurd Ferda's accomplishments really are compared to normal mages. Ruri bluntly admits that Ferda executed every single step with absolute flawlessness, which only makes him extremely suspicious and potentially dangerous. She squeezed her eyes shut and shouted that no normal human could possess such perfect execution without hiding some twisted dark secret. Like being an absolute unhinged masochist who gets off on dragon terror. Ruri really cannot erase that hilarious trauma from her memory. Valdrova chuckles softly, amused that Ruri acknowledges the young lord's talents despite her complaints, concluding that Ferda is genuinely an extraordinary individual. Valdrova gently remarks that they should trust Ferda's stated intentions, but Ruri watches her master with deep concern, knowing how painfully Valdrova was betrayed by humans in the past. Ruri clenches her fists over her dress, vowing that now that her master is finally opening her heart again, she will test Ferda's true loyalty to ensure he never hurts her. A sudden idea flashes in Ruri's mind, and she eagerly proposes to her master that they entrust that specific responsibility to Ferda as the ultimate test. The grand entrance doors swing open as the herald loudly announces the grand arrival of Lord Ferda Rosenova. Inside the Eastern Front Coalition Hall, an assembly of powerful noble lords gathers around a giant round table, whispering in confusion over why the Grand Duke summoned them. Oh, so this overweight noble is complaining about wasting time meeting some newcomer while monster attacks are looming? Yeah, right. Pointing out the other guy's pudginess to emphasize the selfishness. Then his neighbor busts with the big news. They're there to meet the Grand Duke's new fiancé. That dude had to be like, wait, what? What a twist! Another lord laughs mockingly, asking if some foolish brat actually believed the engagement offer was a real marriage proposal. Learning that the boy in question is just an 18-year-old third son from the Rosnova family, snickers and nasty rumors echo through the hall, with lords calling Ferda a defective product, who couldn't even wield a sword despite coming from a legendary house of guardian knights. Yes, classic background nobles serving up fresh disrespect before getting totally humbled. Sitting at the head of the table, an elderly, authoritative noble smirks calmly, telling the others not to fret because a weakling like Ferda won't last a single week. Count Olvera Cancillus smirks maliciously, predicting that Grand Duke Valdrova will inevitably tear this fragile fiancé to shreds just like all the rest before him. The towering mahogany doors creak open, and Ferda strides into the room with Maid Ruri following closely behind his steps. Walking into the overwhelming atmosphere of hostile glares, Ferda maintains an icy, calm composure, looking completely unbothered by the aristocrats. Just a short while earlier in his study, Ferrata had sighed while reading his book, asking why he needed to meet these lords right away, prompting Rue to explain the true weight of Valdrova's domain. Ferda closed his ancient tome with a soft thud, acknowledging that he knows full well about the primordial aspect of darkness that gave rise to the Demon King. An ancient mural depicts the legendary clash where Valdrova brutally slaughtered the Dark Dragon Godwyn, ending his reign of terror. Chibi Ruri nodded approvingly, explaining that for saving the realm from absolute destruction, the Empire granted her master the title of Grand Duke and rule over the entire Eastern territory. She clarified that since Valdrova's sole focus is hunting down monstrous threats on the front lines, her husband's duty is to handle all civil governance and rule over the Eastern lords in her place. Ruri summed it up perfectly. Valdrova slays monsters outside, while Ferda acts as the ultimate house husband managing the estate paperwork. Nothing says peak romance like a monster-slaying dragon wife and a paperwork-grinding husband. Ferda instantly realized this was a subtle test of his leadership, knowing Valdrova still tested his capabilities, but he calmly accepted the challenge. Present day in the council hall, Ferda stands tall with his hands folded behind his back, introducing himself as the future husband of Grand Duke Valdrova. Looking down at the silent aristocrats with a sharp, piercing stare, he smoothly asks how they would prefer he address them. The nobles break into anxious sweat, realizing this kid isn't a naive pushover. The very first words exchanged here will permanently define the hierarchy between them. Count Olvera breaks the tense silence with a fake, flattering grin, declaring that they are merely humble lords living under the Grand Duke's magnificent grace. He smoothly claims that they naturally owe respect to her future consort, before slyly pausing to drop a heavy however. Flexing his veteran status, the old count reminds Ferda that every lord at this table served the Empire long before Ferda was even born. He smugly turns the tables, demanding that Ferda show proper deference and bow his head to his political elders first. Ferda's cold voice cuts through their arrogance like a sharp blade, asking if that's their final answer on whether he should speak to them with respect or put them in their place as inferiors. The atmosphere in the room drops below freezing as Ferda's eyes glint with lethal authority, demanding a straight answer without further foolish games. Completely unnerved by the chilling aura radiating from an 18-year-old, Count Olvera sweats profusely and stammers that it's only fitting for the Grand Duke's husband to treat them as inferiors. Ferda calmly reassures them that he won't meddle in their territories, whether they rule wisely or exploit their citizens, prompting a hot-headed lord to slam his fist onto the table in outrage. Ferda casually waves his hand in a half-hearted apology, smoothly playing off his biting accusation as a total slip of the tongue. But the enraged noble pushes his luck too far, snarling that he now understands why Ferda was cast out like garbage by his own family. Pointing a finger aggressively, the lord screams that a pathetic First Circle outcast shouldn't dare act superior to a proud Fourth Circle mage like himself. Oh boy, bragging about being a Fourth Circle mage to a reincarnated archmage is a speedrun to getting obliterated. Ferda mutters under his breath with a dry smirk, finding it almost adorable that this guy is flexing a Fourth Circle status. Veins popping on his forehead, the noble ignites a massive crimson magic circle beneath his feet, bellowing that mages are judged purely by raw power. Channeling destructive Fourth Circle magic into his palms, he threatens to personally beat some manners into the young lord. Completely unbothered by the deadly magic charging right in front of his face, Ferda calmly raises a single hand, offering a proposal that the arrogant lord won't be able to refuse. Stepping forward with total composure, Ferda smoothly proposes a direct duel to test whether a mere First Circle mage can handle the heat. Word of the insane challenge quickly spreads through the courtyard, leaving the spectators murmuring in total disbelief over a First Circle amateur daring to challenge a Fourth Circle veteran. The aristocrats whisper among themselves, wondering if Thessalos will actually go easy on the young lord or obliterate him on the spot. Because if there's one thing pompous background nobles are famous for, it's definitely mercy. Standing quietly along the walkway, Maid Ruri watches the arena with cold, unblinking eyes, showing zero doubt in her master's fiancé. A chilling gust sweeps across the stone arena floor as the two mages take their places on opposite sides. Looking completely relaxed, Ferda casually asks his opponent what kind of spell he intends to cast during their fight. Thessalos bristles with anger, snapping that asking an opponent to reveal their hand before a duel is completely disrespectful. Bro acts like he's guarding top-secret military intelligence when he was flexing 2 seconds ago. Smirking arrogantly, the old mage taunts Ferda, asking if the young lord is getting cold feet and offering him a chance to forfeit right now. Crimson magical pressure erupts around Thessalos, pride and excitement as he proudly announces he will be using the 4th-tier destructive spell, Magic Blast. A collective gasp echoes through the arena gallery, with the nobles panicking because Magic Blast is built for pure annihilation and could easily kill a normal human. Completely unfazed by the threat, Ferda calmly announces that he will be using a simple First Circle spell known as Mana Shot. Thessalos breaks into a mocking sneer, unable to believe Ferda actually thinks a low-level beginner trick can stand against high-tier magic. Yes, classic anime villain arrogance right before getting absolute humble pie served on a silver platter. A sinister internal thought echoes through the shadows. Ferda knows with absolute certainty that losing isn't even a possibility. With an icy stare, Ferda flexes his fingers in a fluid gesture, quietly declaring that he happens to possess a vast ocean of magic knowledge. Arrogant little brat? Thessalos roars in fury, snarls, channeling raw magical energy directly into his palms. An intricate, multi-layered spell matrix ignites around him, glowing with menacing red runes. Look at the detail in that magic circle. The artist really went all out, making the spell look terrifying. Bellowing with pure malice, Thessalos screams that he will erase Ferda from existence without leaving a single trace. But Ferda just analyzes his form, noting the thick bloodlust and recognizing that Thessalos channels magic through emotion via a red circle. A dark text banner seals the mood. How truly unfortunate this match is going to end for the old fool. 3 brilliant spheres of compressed red mana streak through the air like guided missiles. Thessalos pales in horror, his eyes widening in total shock as he feels the terrifying speed and density of those tiny red orbs. Raising his hand with effortless grace, Ferda coldly declares that the match was decided before it even started. Panic surging through his veins, Thessalos throws his arms up, gasping, desperately trying to summon a defensive barrier. But to his utter bewilderment, the red streaks of energy completely bypass his body. Realization strikes him like a lightning bolt. Ferda wasn't aiming for his chest, but directly at the structural weak points of his incomplete magic circle. A massive 4th Circle magic matrix shatters into millions of glittering fragments. He literally sniped the spell mid-cast. That is high IQ Archmage gameplay right there. The violent magical backlash hits Thessalos full force, blasting his cape back as he staggers in disbelief. Sweat drips down his terrified face as he gasps for air, unable to comprehend how a mere First Circle kid performed a magic disruption that even high archmages can't execute. The lingering magical smoke slowly clears across the arena floor. Thessalos' hand trembles violently against the cold stone, totally drained and trembling from the brutal mana backlash. Collapsing onto his knees, the proud 4th Circle mage breathes heavily, completely broken and defeated. From big bad grandstanding bully to kneeling mess in under 30 seconds. Staring at the floor in absolute despair, he wheezes out the bitter realization that he was totally outclassed. Walking up with smooth, quiet steps, Ferda looks down at him with an unreadable expression, casually asking if he yields. Thessalos stammers, unable to force the humiliating words out of his mouth as the lords watch in silence. Deep inside his heart, a desperate plea burns. More than anything, he wants to grow stronger and reach true power. Bowing his head all the way to the ground, Thessalos admits his defeat, swearing that he will do absolutely anything if it means gaining greater strength. At least the guy has enough self-awareness to admit when he got completely outplayed. Utter chaos erupts in the spectator gallery as the aristocrats chatter endlessly, unable to accept that a fourth-circle master lost to a first-circle nobody. Looming directly behind a whispering noble, Maid Ruri emits a terrifying dark aura, pleasantly suggesting that if his eyes aren't working properly, she'd be happy to gouge them out for him. Noble eek! Ferda extends a polite hand to help Thessalos up, praising his spell output and reassuring him that the strength of the Eastern Territory is truly impressive. Thessalos takes his hand in shock, admitting he never expected to meet someone so extraordinary. Thessalos chuckles humbly, mentioning that getting demoted from the capital wasn't so bad after all, since it allowed him to meet the Grand Duke's fiancée. Ferda's composure suddenly shifts, his gaze narrowing sharply as he asks for the man's full name. The noble smiles softly, introducing himself as Thessalos Vulture. Ferda repeats the name slowly under his breath, ancient memories locking into place while Thessalos asks if they've met before. Ferda's eyes turn pitch black with terrifying murderous intent, whispering that Thessalos was indeed his benefactor in his previous life. Before Thessalos can even process the cryptic words, Ferda lightly presses his index finger directly against the middle of the man's forehead. Ferda mutters the spell command with icy, detached cruelty. Whisper mana shot. A concentrated beam of red magical lightning shoots point blank through Thessalos' skull, instantly obliterating his brain. Holy crap, he executed him on the spot without a second thought. The watching nobles scream in absolute terror, clutching their faces as blood splatters across the pristine stone arena floor. Thessalos' lifeless corpse crashes heavily onto the ground, pooling in a crimson puddle right at Ferda's feet. Standing tall over the dead traitor, Ferda looks down with cold eyes, declaring that he cannot allow a snake like him to live because leaving him alive would only bring grief and betrayal to his fiancée in the future. The intense silence in the hall becomes suffocating as the reality of Ferda's ruthless action sinks into everyone present. Standing over the slain Fourth Circle mage with absolute dominance, Lord Ferda Rosnova cements his utter control over the Eastern Coalition, leaving every single noble trembling in sheer terror. Talk about making an unforgettable first impression. The young archmage isn't playing around. The lifeless body of Thessalos Vulture lies sprawled across the stone floor of the arena, his grand cloak drenched in blood. Text on screen reads, "He killed a noble." Panic erupts through the gallery as the aristocrats clutch their faces in sheer horror, breathless from what they just witnessed. The nobles tremble uncontrollable, whispering among themselves that the duel was already over before Ferda struck the fatal blow. To them, this isn't just a duel victory, it's outright noblicide. Unbothered by the chaos around him, Ferda stands in complete silence as drops of crimson blood line his cheek, his cold blue gaze unfazed by the death he just brought upon the arena. Seriously, look at how casually he steps right over a warm corpse like he's avoiding a puddle. Ferda calmly asks the terrified audience why everyone is acting so stiff, wondering if it's all because of Thessalos. He turns back with total indifference, telling the panicked crowd not to fret because the man simply deserved to die. Scoffs. He adds that leaving someone like Thessalos alive would have only brought immense grief to the Grand Duke. The elderly lord stammers in utter confusion, asking how on earth this was his first time meeting Thessalos, and what this murder could possibly have to do with the Grand Duke's grief. Walking forward with smooth composure, Ferda explains that Grand Duke Valdrova desires happiness for all humans, fighting for humanity despite being a dragon. Contempt and Thessalos actively worked against that noble vision. Watching nobles stand completely frozen, their mouths agape as they try to process such a completely outlandish defense. The aristocrats internally freak out, convinced that Ferda is an absolute lunatic who just executed a lord over crimes that haven't even happened yet. But Ferda casts a dark glance back, declaring he couldn't care less what any of them think. Soon after leaving the arena grounds, a wooden carriage bumps violently along the dirt trail as horses gallop through the sunlit forest. Inside the carriage interior, Ferda slumps over with his hand covering his face, groans heavily as Maid Ruri watches him with her usual stoic expression. Sweat drips down Ferda's pale face as his vision blurs, complaining under his breath that his whole head is spinning in circles. He internally reflects on the duel, admitting to himself that he never expected to run into Thessalos Vulture here, and that firing even a single mana shot completely wiped out his limited mana reserves. Slumping into a total chibi mess, Ferda whines that this bumpy ride is giving him severe motion sickness, missing the smooth mana cars of his past life that haven't even been invented yet. Maid Ruri sarcastically claps her hands together, dryly congratulating him on executing a loyal subject during his very first meeting and complicating the upcoming engagement ceremony. Ferda glances over, asking if she's referring to Thessalos. Ruri flatly confirms it, reminding him that, believe it or not, Thessalos was technically one of the lords loyal to the Grand Duke. Sweat dropping as he pictures Thessalos eagerly bowing, Ferda asks if the man was at least clean in his dealings. Ruri notes that he was reasonably clean and only took moderate bribes, which, in the Far Eastern territory, qualifies as top-tier integrity compared to the other corrupt lords who line their pockets while frontline soldiers die. Ferda sits back and massages his sore neck, insisting that the engagement ceremony will still proceed as scheduled because he had a rock-solid reason to eliminate Thessalos. Closing his eyes as warm sunlight streams through the window, Ferda quietly sifts through his vast ocean of ancient memories. His gaze falls upon a tightly tied cloth sack resting on the carriage seat, remembering that, if his past memories serve him correctly,
Thessalos Vulture was actively committing an unforgivable, heinous crime at that moment.
Upon arriving at the Grand Vulture Castle at sunset, the head butler bows low at the entrance, extending a warm greeting to the honored guests from the Grand Duke's domain. The butler politely explains that Lord Thessalos is currently away, only for Ferda to casually interrupt with a wave, letting him know the Lord is dead so he shouldn't worry about it. Butler? Excuse me? Ferda casually tosses the heavy cloth sack directly into the bewildered butler's hands, telling the old man to take it first. Maid Ruri calmly points a finger, instructing the stunned butler to hang the contents of the bag somewhere clearly visible from the castle gates. The butler pulls back the fabric, his face turning pale with horror as he realizes he's holding Lord Thessalos' decapitated head. A blood-curdling scream echoes across the entire castle estate against the crimson evening sky. Inside Thessalos Vulture's luxurious master bedroom, Ruri looks around the quiet room, remarking that it feels like they're directly ransacking an empty house. Ferda crawls on the carpet, searching under the bed while Ruri reminds him he better find solid corruption proof after publicly executing a lord. Though Ferda points out that fine print note, Ruri was the one who actually severed the head from the corpse. Ruri's eyes flash with a dark, lethal gleam, suggesting she can go retrieve the head and call off the engagement if he prefers. But Ferda interrupts, calling out that he found a hidden trapdoor underneath the bed frame. Feeling around the wooden floorboards, Ferda notes that the secret opening mechanism has to be hidden nearby. Standing tall over him, Ruri bluntly commands her master's fiancé to step aside. Her slitted dragon eye narrows into a terrifying glare as she pulls her fist back with explosive power. She slams her fist straight through the solid floorboards, obliterating the wooden structure into tiny splinters with insane physical force. Dust settles as a massive gaping hole opens in the floor. Ruri calmly brushes off her dress, telling him it's open, while Ferda stands there completely speechless at her brute strength. A dark, eerie stone staircase winds down into a pitch-black subterranean dungeon lit only by a faint, sinister glow. Descending into the basement, both Ferda and Ruri cover their noses, disgusted by the suffocating, heavy stench of blood hanging in the stagnant air. The dark text banner reveals the horror, a hidden underground laboratory filled with tangled, rotting corpses of both humans and vile monsters. The scene exposes the dark truth of a demon follower. Monsters in human skin who sacrifice their own humanity in an endless, sickening thirst for demonic power. Examining a grotesque mutated body chained to the ceiling, Ferda recognizes the corpse as a local territory soldier, realizing Thessalos was stitching together organs from dead guards and monsters? A blood-red text banner seals the sickening truth. What an absolute suicidal monster Thessalos truly was! Ruri's dragon pupil slits into a razor-thin line, radiating pure cold fury at the depraved scene before her. Closing her eyes with icy disgust, Ruri states that humans truly cannot be trusted, adding that being a demon follower is a crime far severe enough to completely wipe away any charge of nobleside. As Ferda flips through a stack of hidden research papers on the desk, Ruri curiously asks him how he could possibly have known about this hidden laboratory. Ignoring the question for a moment, Ferda's eyes narrow in sharp focus as he pulls out a specific document, murmuring that he finally found it. The header reveals Thessalos' nameless secret masterpiece, the infinite mana cultivation method, method. An old memory surfaces in Farada's mind, recalling a hooded figure studying forbidden texts, asking Farada if he knew that monsters continuously generate raw mana. The flashback reveals bubbling glass retorts, noting that monster mana is normally far too corrupt and unstable to ever be utilized by human mages. The hooded figure studies the bubbling glass retorts, curious asking if it might be possible to replicate that continuous monster mana generation. A dark, sinister text panel highlights the forbidden core of his experiment. What if a mage could draw out pure, untainted mana without ever stopping? Thessalos throws his arms up maniacally, boasting that completing this technique will grant an infinite source of power to break past all circle limits. But a quiet, menacing voice interrupts from behind, asking what he actually plans to do with such power. Grasping his research with a wicked grin, Thessalos declares that with his new undead monster army, he'll slaughter every noble who demoted him to the dragon's realm. Man, talk about holding a massive grudge. This guy had revenge on his mind 24/7. Thessalos chuckles to himself about reaching the level of a great mage, completely unaware that hooded Ferda is raising a glowing mana shot directly behind his head. Ferda coldly notes that the research will be far more useful for his own revenge, blasting Thessalos down on the spot before taking the scroll with a calm thank you. Back in the present, Ferda holds the secret research in his hands, reflecting on how this exact nameless cultivation method allowed his past self to reach the 8th circle faster than anyone else. He knows that by studying this forbidden knowledge again, reaching his former peak will take a fraction of the time. Maid Ruri watches him with a cool glare, pointing out that seeing him covet such forbidden knowledge proves he's human after all, noting no one would know if he kept it since the researcher is dead. She sarcastically congratulates him on stumbling upon the ultimate shortcut to power that every greedy human craves. Rory continues listing all the reasons he could easily pocket the document, only for Ferda to flatly shut her down with a firm no. Handing the parchment back to her, Ferda commands Ruri to completely destroy every piece of research inside this underground laboratory. Wait, he's actually tossing away an infinite mana cheat code? Ruri's mouth drops in complete disbelief, gasping, clutching the pages as she asks if he's out of his mind to turn down knowledge that could revolutionize magic academia. Ferda calmly admits that while this research could easily overturn magic academia, none of that actually matters to him. He reflects on his ultimate goal, knowing that rather than letting the temptation of dark magic bring grief to the Grand Duke, it's far better to wipe it off the face of the earth right now. Looking back with cold, resolute blue eyes, Ferda gives the final order: burn everything to ash. Ruri quiets down, looking at the pages in her hands before quietly agreeing that fulfilling his command is simple enough. Mystical blue dragonfire ignites at her fingertips, quickly consuming the ancient parchment in brilliant light. Massive blue flames engulf the entire secret laboratory, incinerating every corpse and forbidden document, as Ferda reflects that magic always reflects the soul of its caster. He realizes Thessalos' magic was infected by pure hatred and envy, a direct reflection of the dark, resentful path Ferda himself walked in his past life. Ferda knows that inheriting such hate-filled magic would only cause his own heart to be consumed by uncontrollable rage once again. Watching the blue inferno burn away the laboratory, he bids farewell to his past self, the bitter soul who forced himself to hate just to survive. A soft, peaceful smile spreads across Ferda's face as he gently places a hand on his chest, watching the flames destroy his past mistakes. Ruri gives him a side eye, internally calling him an unpredictable psycho and a complete masochist for burning free power. Seriously, you gotta love Ruri's total lack of filter when judging her future master's fiancé. She sighs softly, suggesting they leave this filthy, blood-soaked basement once and for all. Ruri adds that it would be terribly rude to reek of blood for his official engagement ceremony, causing Ferda's eyes to light up as the big moment finally arrives. The sun shines brightly over Grand Duke Valdrova's massive, majestic castle on the day of the official engagement ceremony. Dressed in a pristine white noble suit, Ferda walks down the stone hallway while Ruri checks if he finished writing his ceremonial oath. Holding the folded paper, Ferda remarks that making them write their own vows shows the Grand Duke is actually quite a romantic at heart. Ruri immediately sweat drops with toxic green aura, grumbling that holding a sacred ceremony in a cave below the castle completely destroys destroys her lady's dignity. Ferda just chuckles at how stressed she gets over royal decorum. Ruri maintains her signature deadpan stare, looking completely done with the entire situation. Glaring cross-armed at him, Ruri sharpens her eyes and tells him not to dare ruin the white suit she spent hours ironing. Ferda internally sighs, relieved that she's taken out her frustration on him instead of the guests. Shifting to serious political matters, Ferda asks about the current state of the Grand Duke's domain since the last assembly. He adjusts his collar, noting that the regional lords he saw didn't look fit to lead a battle line, which Ruri flatly confirms. Ruri explains that after granting autonomy to local lords, corrupt nobles began lining their pockets while suppressing starving peasants with brute force, leaving the territory on the brink of total rebellion. Ferda notes how severe that sounds, asking if the Grand Duke couldn't just step in directly and force them into line with a single command. Ruri reaches out to a massive stone door, cryptically replying that he'll understand why very soon. Stepping into a vast underground chamber lined with hundreds of lit candles, Ruri instructs Lord Ferda to sit on the altar and wait. Terrifying crimson energy leaks through the central double doors as a deep voice announces the start of the engagement ceremony. The suffocating pressure hits Ferda like a freight train, making him slump down and gasp for breath under the immense weight. Colossal dragon eye and razor-sharp claw peek through the opening doors, breathing nervously, radiating aura so thick it threatens to crush Ferda's entire body. Sweat pours down Ferda's face as he stares at the altar, desperately wondering if he's truly prepared to face the demonic dragon Valdrova face to face. Ruri stands gracefully in the center of the candlelit hall, holding a clear crystal decanter, solemnly declaring that today, mortality and immortality shall become one. She carefully lifts the decanter with both hands, her expression completely serene despite the monstrous aura filling the cave. Ruri pours a shimmering liquid into the ceremonial bowl held by Ferda, reciting the sacred vow that mortality shall wash away its fear. Ferda raises the heavy wooden bowl to his lips and downs the ceremonial drink in one large gulp. As the liquid flows down his throat, Ferda's eyes widen in shock as he realizes this is no ordinary wine. Internal text reveals the incredible truth. The suffocating dragon pressure crushing his body is rapidly fading away. Ruri walks over to the other side of the altar, pouring liquid for the dragon while reciting that immortality shall erase the futility of infinite flow. But right as the ceremony reaches its grand peak, the giant dragon claw awkwardly bumps the table, flipping the bowl over with a loud splat. Ruri just deadpans, flatly stating they'll have to restart from the very beginning. Talk about a ruined romantic moment. A short while later, the ceremonial drink ritual restarts, but Ferda's already gulping down another massive bowl of high-proof dragon brew with sweat pouring down his face. Seriously? How many times do they have to restart this oath drink just because a dragon claw bumped the table? Drowning in alcohol, Ferda's eyes glaze over as he realizes he's already had way too much wine for his very first drink of this new life, fearing he's gonna pass out any second. And right on cue, the giant dragon claw awkwardly slips through the door gap again, knocking over the vessel for the 100th time. Watching the bowl spill yet again made Ruri's cool composure completely cracks as she grits her teeth in pure, unadulterated irritation. Bowing politely to her dizzy future master, Ruri softly excuses herself for a moment before stepping out to address her lady directly. Left all alone in the vast candlelit chamber, Ferda slumps over the low table, hiccups, completely wasted while waiting for someone to return. Suddenly, Ruri's booming voice echoes from behind the massive stone doors as she aggressively berates her lady, demanding to know what she thinks she's doing right now. She angrily reminds the dragon that she was the one who threw a temper tantrum to marry a human, so why is her loyal maid suffering for it? Sonic shockwaves rattle the room as Ruri yells that she put up with all the ridiculous demands, causing poor Ferda to flinch violently on the floor. Ruri continues tearing into her master, shouting how disgraceful it is to hide behind a door while her fiancé sits right in front of her. Man, Ruri isn't just a maid, she's basically running the whole household at this point. Her furious roar echoes far beyond the cave, radiating across Grand Duke Valdrova's entire castle domain as she threatens her master that if she spills the engagement wine one more time, there will be hell to pay. Back inside the quiet hall, Ferda crawls along the stone floor in complete awe, staring blankly as Ruri steps back inside and closes the entrance. Sweat dripping down his cheek, Ferda asks if she heard that terrifying roar, only for Ruri to calmly reply that it was an impressive vocal feat on par with a dragon's breath attack. Sighing softly, Ruri explains that she had no choice if she wanted the ceremony to finish, revealing that Lady Valdrova actually suffers from severe social anxiety. Wait! The terrifying demonic dragon Valdrova is an introverted shut-in? Rory explains that her lady avoids human interaction at all costs, which is why she never leaves her lair unless she's hunting monsters, leaving Ferda completely flabbergasted by this shocking revelation. Suddenly, a human-sized hand reaches through the massive stone doorway, slowly pushing the entrance open. Stepping into the chamber is a figure completely clad in heavy, gleaming red and gold dragon armor with a horned helmet hiding her entire face. Ferda's eyes go wide as he stares at her in total disbelief. The intimidating armored figure walks over and kneels directly across from Ferda at the ceremonial altar, looking like she's ready to invade a fortress rather than get engaged. Ferda narrows his eyes, reflecting on how dragon polymorphs are supposed to be breathtakingly beautiful human forms, yet his bride showed up looking like a final boss battle. Sitting upright in full battle gear, the Dragon Lady remains completely silent as Ruri steps forward to announce the resumption of the official engagement ceremony. Ruri gracefully recites the sacred vows once more, pouring the sparkling liquid into the ceremonial bowl while the armored dragon carefully raises her heavy gauntlets to receive it. Reaching up to her helmet, the Dragon Lady slightly tilts back her visor slit, revealing a glimpse of soft, gorgeous lips and a stunning lower face hidden underneath. Ferda's heart skips a beat as romantic sparkles fill his vision, completely mesmerized by the sudden glimpse of her breathtaking elegance. Holding the bowl with both hands, the armored bride gracefully drinks the ceremonial wine without spilling a single drop, proving she can be delicate even in heavy plate mail. Beneath the dark visor, a gorgeous, gentle smile forms across her lips, surrounded by a radiant, romantic aura that takes Ferda's breath away. Okay, the contrast between full plate armor and a shy, smiling bride is top-tier aesthetic. Extreme close-up on Ferda's bright blue eye as his heartbeat thumps against his chest, completely entranced by her presence. Sitting across from his stunning bride, Ferda wonders if the engagement wine washed away his primal fear, realizing just how much effort she put into preparing for a mere human like him. Maid Rui clears her throat with a polite ahem, announcing that it is now time for the couple to read their written vows to one another as Ferda reaches into his pristine white suit. Unfolding his paper, Ferda reflects that while written words might seem meaningless since he regressed from the future, his feelings for her are absolute. Looking up with gentle blue eyes, Ferda speaks softly, stating that while she doesn't know him well yet, he knows her deeply because she gave him her heart in his past life. Full view of the armored dragon lady listening intently as Ferda declares that through her heart, he witnessed how she was betrayed and slandered countless times, yet always fulfilled her noble duty with unyielding dignity. A majestic vision surfaces of the colossal dragon Valdrova soaring through a starry sky to protect a lone figure, as Ferda vows that he learned true nobility from how she embraced even those who hated her. Surrounded by warm glowing light, Ferda states with complete sincerity that because she never turned her back on those she loved, he is making his sacred vow today. An ethereal image of the dragon's gentle eye looking down through leaves frames his spoken words, as he vows that this time around, he will offer his heart to her instead. Lowering his paper with a soft, genuine smile, Ferda gazes straight at her, radiating pure affection and warmth that lights up the entire cave. Pausing for a second, Ferda adds that although he didn't write it down on his official paper, there is one last thing he needs to say out loud. He looks her straight in the eye and declares that it is a true honor to be engaged to such a beauty. Bro just dropped a maximum charm line on an introverted dragon. Behind her heavy iron helmet, the dragon lady's mouth parts in complete, overwhelming shock as his direct compliment hits her like a freight train. Over in the corner, Maid Ruri squints her eyes and squirms in secondhand embarrassment at how unbelievably cheesy and romantic Ferda's speech turned out. Clearing her throat, Ruri announces that it is now the bride's turn to read her written oath, only to pause when Lady Valdrova freezes in complete silence. Without warning, the Dragon Lady stands straight up from her seat in full armor, surprising both Ferda and Ruri. Turning on her heel, the armored bride spins around sharply away from her fiancé. She bolts at full speed toward the exit, ducking straight out through the gap in the stone doorway. The massive iron door slams shut with a thunderous crash, leaving Ferda and Ruri standing in complete, awkward silence. Talk about pulling a hit and run on your own wedding ceremony. Turning around with a bright professional smile, Maid Ruri folds her hands, cheerfully declaring that the engagement ceremony is now officially complete while Ferda stands there totally speechless. A muffled, shy voice speaks from behind the heavy closed doors as Lady Valdrova apologizes, asking if it would be all right for her to go into seclusion for 3 days. Maid Ruri clasps her hands together in pure joy, her face glowing with overwhelming pride. A cute speech bubble captures Ruri's extreme excitement as she internally cheers for her incredible master. Maid Ruri glows with intense pride, thinking her lady pulled off a genius power move to put that arrogant human punk in his place, praising her hit-and-run tactic for giving her total political leverage. Laughing triumphantly to herself, Ruri boasts that the upper hand now belongs entirely to Lady Valdrova, only to catch sight of something fluttering on the ground. Ruri's eye twitches in confusion as she notices scattered oath papers fluttering across the lair floor beyond the doors. The camera pans behind the closed doors to reveal the hilarious reality. The giant red dragon Valdrova is curled up on the floor, hiding her face in her massive dragon claws while blushing in absolute dying embarrassment. Maid Ruri sweat drops, realizing her terrifying dragon master didn't execute a master political strategy at all. She literally just ran away because she couldn't handle a single compliment. Scattered across the stone floor of the lair lie dozens of discarded oath drafts filled with rewritten vows. The giant dragon's shy inner thoughts reveal that she genuinely wanted to present a proper written oath to welcome her new partner, but things clearly didn't go according to plan. Maid Ruri stands motionless on the littered floor, her usual stoic expression replaced by pure bewilderment as she blinks deadpan at the chaotic mess, directly questioning why her lady didn't just read it out loud. Sprawled out amidst the sea of parchment, the colossal red dragon Valdrova buries her head in her massive claws, whimpering in total embarrassment as she confesses that she simply lacked the courage to lock eyes with Ferda and speak her heart. Man, seeing a realm-destroying apex predator squirm like a timid schoolgirl is peak comedy. In the dragon's dazzling fantasy, Ferda sits gracefully in his polished, pristine white suit, surrounded by ethereal glowing embers as his piercing blue eyes and velvety voice replay continuously in her mind. Glowing sparkles highlight Ferda's breathtaking gaze as he looks straight ahead with intense charm. The dragon maiden admits to herself that the moment she met his stare, her mind completely short-circuited. Surrounded by an imaginary garden of lush pink roses, the dragon swoons with twinkling eyes, entirely lost in romantic daydreaming, while Maid Ruri stands in the corner staring blankly, utterly fed up with her master's dramatic internal antics. Ruri's deadpan reaction is literally all of us watching this over-the-top maiden energy. Clearing her throat softly, Maid Ruri closes her eyes and prepares to deliver a dose of harsh reality, apologizing in advance for bringing up a serious matter on such a celebratory occasion. Stepping directly before the massive dragon, Ruri calmly cautions her lady that in moments like these, she needs to mentally prepare herself for eventual heartbreak and disappointment, catching the dragon completely off guard. Ruri reminds her master that since Lord Ferda has now been officially instated as her fiancé, he holds full administrative authority to govern the Eastern Territories on her behalf. Sinister whisper, and history proves that humans have a nasty habit of corrupting once they taste power. A vivid historical memory flashes back to a grand balcony where an ambitious human ruler waves triumphantly to cheering crowds under showering golden confetti, symbolizing how easily mortals turn arrogant after acquiring status. The red dragon narrows her golden slitted eye, taking in her maid's grave warning with a silent, calculating glare. Bowing with impeccable maid etiquette, Ruri asks for forgiveness for digging up decades-old memories, emphasizing that it remains the wisest counsel she can offer, to which the dragon softly acknowledges her loyal servant's valid concerns. Outside the ancient fortress, a brilliant full moon hangs over the vast starry night sky, underscoring the tragic truth that mortal lives are merely fleeting blips in an immortal dragon's lifespan. Standing by the towering arched window of his guest chamber, Ferda gazes out into the serene moonlight, whispering to himself that it's probably best to suppress these unexpected fluttering emotions before they grow deeper. Exhaling a heavy sigh into the cool night air, Ferda's quiet breath misting slightly as he tries to regain his composure. Collapsing backward onto his luxurious bed with his hands neatly folded over his suit, Ferda stares up at the high ceiling, quietly muttering how bizarre his current emotional state feels. Raising his open palm toward the dim ceiling light, Ferda reflects on how his previous life was entirely consumed by raw, vengeful hatred and bitter fury, leaving absolutely zero room in his heart for warmth or affection. Sitting up on the edge of the mattress with his posture hunched, Ferda rests his chin in his hands, completely absorbed in deep introspection. Extreme close-up on Ferda's vibrant blue eye catching a brilliant crimson flare, realizing that ever since he met his dragon bride, a specific memory keeps looping endlessly in his mind. Wait, is his regressed magic core reacting to a sudden romantic awakening? Clutching his chest as a radiant red magic circle glows and wildly swirls beneath his suit, Ferda grimaces in confusion, desperately questioning what this intense surging force inside him actually represents. As dawn breaks over the mountain range surrounding Duke Valdrova's fortress, Ferda notes that while an unstable magic circle can shatter a mage's body, properly mastering its wild surge will grant him insane explosive growth. Stepping outside into the golden autumn woods carrying his leather luggage, Ferda stands tall, confident that since he reached the absolute pinnacle of magic in his original timeline, climbing back to power will be a walk in the park. Analyzing a fine crystal goblet filled with dark crimson liquid, Ferda observes how mana condenses, recognizing that while his current one-circle reservoir is severely restricted, his foundation remains elite. A complex, shimmering geometric spell matrix glows brightly, novice body spinning the volatile crimson energy into a tight vortex without wasting a single drop. Ferda exerts pure willpower over his raging internal magic circle. Glowing red energy rings expand dramatically between Ferda's hands as his focus sharpens to a razor-thin edge. Crimson light flares as the spell title announces his instant breakthrough, Spellblower 2 Circle. Ferda smiles faintly, satisfied that this newfound strength brings him one step closer to protecting his dragon bride. Bro casually leaped an entire tier in magic progression in a single night. Talk about main character cheat codes. Sunlight bathes the towering Gothic spires of the castle as a shocked exclamation echoes through the hallways, completely floored by Ferda's absurd cultivation speed. Walking briskly beside Ferda down the grand stone corridor, Maid Ruli praises his truly astonishing growth, chuckles admitting she was wondering what he was secretly up to, locked in his quarters for 3 whole days. Turning her sharp reptilian eyes toward him, Ruri curiously inquires whether all Red Circle mages naturally advance at such a terrifyingly absurd rate. Looking effortlessly cool in profile, Ferda calmly responds that progression speed entirely depends on the individual's mental discipline rather than the element itself. An ominous text banner highlights a crucial warning. The rapid ascension of a red circle always comes bundled with dangerous psychological side effects. Ferda walks across a fragile sheet of ice over an abyss where a single drop of crimson blood falls, explaining that every new circle demands stronger emotional stimulation, burning the most intense feeling directly into the caster's soul. A chilling flashback panel portrays a dark hooded figure rising from a crimson pool of blood, recalling how in his past life, Ferda originally awakened his magic circle purely through consumed hatred. Dark, scratched textures frame his inner thoughts, acknowledging that because hatred fueled his original growth, he spent his entire past existence obsessively hunting new targets to destroy, even after completing his initial revenge. Close up on Ferda's resolute blue eyes flashing with sharp clarity, showing he has no intention of repeating those dark mistakes in this second life. Opening the heavy wooden double doors, Maid Ruri presents a magnificent grand office flooded with golden sunlight through high stained glass windows, announcing that this will serve as Ferda's official workspace while acting as the Grand Duke's proxy. Sunlight illuminates a polished mahogany desk equipped with a classic red feather quill pen, pristine parchment, and elegant wax seals. Ferda mentally notes that despite this being a dragon's fortress, he can feel his bride's subtle, thoughtful care hidden in every single detail. She might be a shy, shut-in dragon, but she definitely gave him top-tier VIP treatment. Taking his seat upon the opulent golden throne chair behind the desk, Ferda steeples his fingers with a sharp, commanding gaze, declaring that it is time to execute his very first duty as the territory's regent. A dramatic aerial shot overlooks the gray, fortress-encircled town nestled beneath the brooding mountain peak, emphasizing how the land has been virtually abandoned and neglected due to the Grand Duke's social isolation. A stark sepia flashback depicts Maid Ruri casually dangling the severed head of the executed traitor Thessalon while corrupt fat nobles cringe back in absolute horror. Ferda notes that after he publicly exposed Thessalon and executed him, the local lords have been walking on eggshells around him, making administrative control way easier. Sitting back at his grand desk with Featherquill in hand, Ferda prepares to draft official letters to the regional lords, while Ruri asks what tone he intends to take for his debut greeting as proxy ruler. Glancing sideways with a cold, ruthless smirk, Ferda chillingly states that his message will simply inform them that they'll be seeing a whole lot of each other from now on. The actual letter text reveals Ferda's terrifying ultimatum. If you object to this decision, do not reply. Consider that my way of showing you respect. Ferda Valdrova. Meanwhile, panels show horrified noblelords sweating profusely in panic as they read the ominous dragon-stamped document. Bro literally sent them a shut up or die letter and called it showing respect. Absolute savage moves.
A ferocious, scar-faced giant wolf monster snarls menacingly above a panel showing dead farmers scattered across dark, corrupted farmland, highlighting the dire monster infestation plaguing the countryside.
Massive bursts of fiery dragon breath annihilate colossal behemoths on the battlefield, while the caption explains that although Grand Duke Valdrova personally obliterates Calamity-class threats, smaller monster swarms still slip through to terrorize commoners. Writing down strategic notes on fresh paper, Ferda states that his immediate priority is assembling a specialized elite team, prompting Ruri to ask if he already has specific candidates in mind. Maid Ruri picks up the newly drafted recruitment scroll, examining the handwritten list with a focused glare. Close-up on the paper revealing 4 specific names: Cernal Marquis, Jed Swallow, Echidna Filius, and Helios. Ruri blinks in complete confusion upon reading the unexpected lineup. Sweating notoriously while holding the document, Maid Ruri blurted out in utter disbelief, asking if he seriously expects them to go out and personally hunt down this bizarre first candidate themselves, while Ferda walks ahead with supreme confidence? Arriving in the breathtaking city of scholars, Esclia, where a colossal world tree looms over the bustling town, Maid Ruri questions why on earth they've traveled all this way just for an obscure scholar nobody has ever heard of. Walking through the stone-paved market, Ferda casually explains that this guy is an unpolished genius who hasn't made his big mark on the world yet. The Ruri mutters under her breath that running a domain by hiring random strangers feels a bit irresponsible. Unfolding the recruitment document, Ruri suspiciously asks if he just randomly scribbled these names down on the spot earlier, but Ferda calmly insists that gathering this specific intel took an immense amount of time and effort. In truth, during his previous life, Ferda obsessively stalked these exact figures, thoroughly researching every single one of their accomplishments just to find flaws and reasons to despise them for his revenge list. Talk about turning your psychotic stalker research into a job recruitment drive. Back then, his soul was so consumed by raw vengeance that he blindly targeted anyone with talent just to unleash his inner fury. And now those dark records are serving as his ultimate talent scouting database. Admitting to himself that his past self was borderline paranoid, Ferda sits beside Ruri beneath a massive scholar statue, pondering how on earth they're going to locate this guy in such a massive city. Out of nowhere, a toothless street vendor yells at the top of his lungs, calling out to the young lord and his adorable maid companion to get their attention. Smiling wide while waving candied fruit skewers, the vendor promises that even top academy students flock to his stall for a sweet treat to ease their daily stress. Man's out here running a whole sugar empire right outside the academy gates. Ferda immediately takes advantage of the situation, asking if many academy graduates frequent his stall, to which the proud merchant boasts that he's been running this spot for ages. Ferda cuts straight to the chase, asking if the vendor recognizes an academy student known by the infamous nickname Messy Scholar. Ruri instantly pouts in disgust, warning Ferda not to bring a literal slob into their pristine castle, while the vendor laughs and confirms that the moniker is practically legendary around these parts. Ruri's main concern isn't domain safety, it's having to clean up after another lazy slob. Playing hard to get, the merchant claims his memory gets a little foggy with so many customers around, prompting Ferda to immediately read between the lines and ask how much money it will take. Ferda offers to buy 1 skewer, but Ruri suddenly steps forward with a sharp glare, commanding the merchant to hand over all 3 fruit skewers on display. Ferda stares in complete silence as Ruri's eyes glisten with pure anticipation while holding her hand out for the sweet treats. Glowing with vibrant colors, the vendor proudly presents the 3 glistening candied fruit skewers dripping with sweet honey. Maid Ruri holds the skewers with sparkling eyes, gulp completely mesmerized by the delicious sugary glaze on top. When Ferda dryly remarks that he didn't expect her to have such a sweet tooth, Ruri defensively blushes and insists she only bought them as a strategic bribe to ensure the merchant talks. Ruri, nobody is buying that cover story. You just wanted the sugar high. Munching happily on the fruits with loud crunching sounds, Ruri shows a rare childish side that leaves Ferda realizing she's not quite as emotionless as she pretends to be. Catching Ferda staring right at her, Ruri suddenly freezes in her tracks, realizing she let her stoic maid facade slip for a brief second. Quickly shifting her posture with a nervous twitch, Ruri hides the skewers behind her back while maintaining a perfectly serious posture. Trying to save face, she awkwardly holds out one of the fruit skewers toward Ferda, offered as a peace offering to distract him. Moving deeper into the shadowy back alleys as dusk falls over the city, Ferda notes that they need to pick up the pace before night settles in completely. Guided by the vendor's tip, they arrive at a secluded doorway just in time to hear a loud crash as a disheveled man tumbles under a mountain of collapsed wooden planks and research papers. Sweating profusely behind cracked eyeglasses, the miserable scholar gasps in sheer horror as his life's work scatters across the dirty floor. Clasping his head in agony, he despairs that all his meticulous notes and experimental blueprints have been completely ruined in a single second. Once hailed as the top freshman prodigy of Veritas Academy, Burnell Marquise had tumbled all the way down to becoming the ultimate failure of a graduate, burdened with the humiliating official title of messy scholar. Flashbacks reveal how on his graduation day, Loan Sharks aggressively slung an arm around his shoulders, mockingly congratulating him on earning such an embarrassing title after all their financial dealings together. With a predatory grin spread across his face, the debt collector made it crystal clear that the celebration was over and it was finally time to settle his maximal unpaid loans. Forcing a shaky, terrified smile, Burnell knew deep down that despite his brilliant mind, his entire worldly existence consisted of nothing but compounding debt. Ha! Imagine graduating with a top degree only to realize your net worth is literally negative infinity. Back in the present, inside his messy workshop, glass shatters violently against the wall as loan sharks corner him against the dusty shelves. Cowering helplessly on the floor, Burnell begs for just a little more time, but the enraged collector shouts that he's already given him years to deliver on his promises. Pinching his nose in absolute disgust at the foul odor, the loan shark demands to know why the room is filled with decaying animal carcasses, though Burnell nervously corrects him that those are actually monster corpses. Burnell eagerly explains his revolutionary research recycles monster remains into high-value mana stones and energy sources, promising it will transform the entire continent once perfected, though the lender dismissively calls it cheap cope. Puffing on a cigar with a cold stare, the loan shark demands to know if this grand project brings in a single coin today, forcing Burnell to admit that it currently yields zero profit due to endless variables. Exhaling a thick cloud of gray smoke, the lender scoffs that Burnell is completely naive about how the ruthless real world actually operates. Reaching into his jacket pocket, the collector offers a dark alternative, stating that if Burnell abandons his useless recycling project, he'll give him a far more lucrative way to settle his debt. Flipping open a razor-sharp switchblade, the debt collector urges him to use his genius intellect to design military weapons instead. Gasp. Guaranteed to print cash in no time. Trembling in fear as the metal blade gleams in his face, Burnell frantically clutches his research proposals, stammering that he has plenty of other peaceful ideas that don't involve creating tools of war. Slamming the sharp dagger into the stone floor right between Burnell's legs, the brute shouts that a penniless debtor has zero right to pick and choose his jobs. Shaking uncontrollably in terror, Burnell desperately clutches his papers against his chest, refusing to compromise his moral principles as a scholar. Closing his eyes tightly, Burnell shouts at the top of his lungs that he will never develop weapons of destruction, begging for any other way to repay his debt. Losing his patience completely, the loan shark delivers a brutal kick right into Burnell's ribs, sending the helpless scholar crashing down onto the floor. Joining in on the beatdown, the thugs rain relentless kicks and punches onto Burnell, shouting that if he refuses to cooperate, they'll happily beat him to a pulp. Shielding his skull with his bloodied arms, Burnell desperately whimpers for them not to damage his head, protecting his mind above everything else. Right at that critical threshold, a cold, authoritative voice echoes through the dark room, commanding the thugs to stop immediately. Gasping through his cracked lenses, Burnell slowly opens his swollen eyes to see who just intervened in his beatdown. Walking inside with immaculate composure, Ferda steps into the workshop with maid Ruri following close behind, casually remarking that the noise led him right to his target. Standing tall under the faint light, Ferda looks down upon the loan sharks with a gaze cold enough to freeze hell over. Sizing up Ferda's expensive noble clothing, the loan shark puffs on his cigar and arrogantly asks if this pretty noble boy was also scammed by Burnell's endless debt schemes. When Ferda calmly denies any financial connection, the loan shark dismissively tells him to wait his turn while he finishes beating Burnell, just enough to leave his vocal cords functional. Bro really thinks he's talking to an ordinary noble boy. He has zero clue he's dealing with a regressed archmage. Ferda narrows his eyes in sharp focus, calmly noting to himself that having the debt collectors beat Burnell senseless creates a massive complication for his plans. Looking down at the bruised scholar groaning on the cold stone floor, Ferda coldly points out that he specifically needs Burnell's brilliant intellect fully intact, not just his functional vocal cords. Turning toward the arrogant loan shark and his towering bodyguards, Ferda smoothly steps forward and offers to pay off Burnell's entire accumulated debt right on the spot. Smirking through a thick cloud cloud of gray cigar smoke, the debt collector smugly sneers that with compounding interest, the total comes to a whopping 72 gold coins. Man really thinks 72 gold coins is going to intimidate a literal regressed archmage with a duchess for a wife. Without missing a single beat, Maid Ruri steps forward and forcefully slams a heavy pack leather perch right onto the wooden desk. The top of the leather pouch bursts open to reveal a dazzling pile of pure gold coins, leaving the loan shark and his thugs completely wide-eyed and stunned into silence. Snickering greedily as his eyes light up with dollar signs, the debt collector mockingly congratulates Burnell on stumbling across such an outrageously wealthy sponsor. But as the thug eagerly plunges his hand into the sack of gold coins, an iron-tight grip instantly clamps around his wrist. Ferda glares down him with an icy expression, quietly asking the greedy debt collector where he thinks he's reaching when their negotiation hasn't even concluded. Struggling to pull his hand free in utter panic, the loan shark shouts in confusion, completely baffled by how a slender maid possesses such terrifying physical strength. Ferda nonchalantly remarks that since they brutally battered Burnell's head, they may have damaged his cognitive faculties, and damaged goods require immediate financial compensation. Bro is using elite corporate lawyer logic to turn a debt collection beatdown into a full-blown extortion scheme. As the thug angrily screams about being held hostage by a servant, Ruri cold-bloodedly twists his arm backward, forcing an agonizing shriek from his lungs. Clasping his fractured wrist in absolute agony, the thug whimpers while Ferda gives Ruri a quiet nod, prompting her to sigh at how pitiful these lowlifes truly are. Ruri's eyes suddenly flare with a terrifying reptilian glow, unleashing a wave of suffocating killing intent across the entire room. Completely overwhelmed by her monstrous pressure, the loan shark and his remaining thugs instantly collapse face first onto the floorboards, crushed by sheer aura. Trembling helplessly on the floor, the lander desperately gasps for air as Ferda steps closer, laying out two non-negotiable options for their survival. Ferda presents his cold ultimatum. They can either pay a hefty financial settlement for assaulting Burnell, or endure the exact same brutal physical beatdown in return. With a dark, amused expression, Ferda mockingly assumes that being greedy loan sharks who treasure money above life, they'll obviously prefer taking the severe beating over losing a single coin. Giggles. Imagine being given a choice between financial settlement and getting folded like laundry by a maid. Cracking her knuckles with a chilling expression, Ruri prepares to administer a thoroughly equal beatdown to settle the compensation balance. Moments later, the thoroughly battered thugs limp out of the workshop weeping, leaving Ruri proudly dusting off her immaculate maid apron under sparkling light. Still recovering on the dusty floor, Burnell stammers out his profound gratitude, deeply wondering how he could ever hope to repay such a miraculous rescue. Adjusting his cracked eyeglasses, the disheveled scholar formally introduces himself as Burnell Marquis, infamously known as the Messy Scholar, and politely asks for his savior's identity. When Ferda casually reveals his full noble name, Burnell's jaw drops in utter shock, realizing who stands before him. Realizing he's speaking directly to the Grand Duchess's official husband, Burnell immediately dives headfirst onto the floorboards, desperate, begging for forgiveness. Ferda smoothly waves away the panicking scholar's apology, getting straight to the point by announcing that he came specifically to review Burnell's research. Staring up in complete disbelief, Burnell stammers as Ferda confirms that he wants to utilize his revolutionary monster recycling methods in the Eastern Territory. Ferda directly guarantees that if Burnell relocates to Valdrova Castle, his controversial experiments will receive total official backing and resources. Burnell went from getting his ribs kicked in by debt collectors to securing unlimited government funding in under 10 minutes. Talk about an ultimate turn of fortune. As Ferda promises unlimited monster materials and cutting-edge facilities, Burnell weeps tears of pure joy, while Ruri quietly whispers to Ferda, questioning if this scholar is mentally stable. However, Ferda's tone turns sharp as he attaches a major condition, stating that Burnell must apply his findings to develop military weapons. Clenching his fists tightly, Burnell's expression darkens as he firmly rejects the proposal, declaring that he will never design tools meant for slaughtering humans. Ferda stares down at the stubborn scholar with a calm, analytical gaze, acknowledging Burnell's deeply rooted pacifist morals. But Ferda's voice drops to a chilling tone as he confronts Burnell about the true nature of the monstrous creatures he uses for research. Visualizing a terrifying, colossal beast, Ferda sharply asks Burnell if he comprehends how many innocent human lives a single monster butchers in the Far East. He paints a harrowing picture of the Grand Duchess standing on the front lines, fighting gargantuan abominations capable of wiping out whole cities in a single night. Day after day, she places her life directly on the line against demonic hordes to shield the realm from total annihilation. Ferda coldly notes that citizens enjoying peaceful academy life are merely living comfortably upon her silent sacrifice without ever acknowledging it. To ease her unbearable burden on the battlefield, Ferda explains that he urgently requires an engineering genius to forge superior subjugation weaponry. Reaching into his coat, Ferda presents an official document, formally offering the mocked graduate the prestigious position of head researcher. Ferda's recruitment speech was so incredibly persuasive, I almost signed up to fight giant monsters myself.
Burnell stares at the crimson wax seal in stunned silence, deeply moved that someone finally recognizes his true talent and vision.
Though still trembling with lingering hesitation, this disheveled failure is secretly destined to become the legendary pioneer who ushers in a golden era of magic engineering. In the tragic future Ferda remembers from his past life, Burnell's revolutionary military inventions were the ultimate defense that held back the apocalyptic demonic invasion.